The bowling is back in Bowling Green. Welcome back to the Zig Zone. Happy Sunday. This, as always, is a presentation of Falcon Media Sports Network, WBGU 88.1 FM, and Bowling Green Falcon Media. I'm your host, Holden Ruck, and we had some real highs and lows in the last week, so a lot going on in the realm of BG athletics. And before we get started with that, gonna just go around the room and let you know who's here with us. So first of all, talking some men's basketball today, we got Mr. Artie Abrego. How you doing, Artie?
Pretty good. The men's basketball team went 1-1 in the past week with a win against Taylor and a loss against Michigan State at the Breslin Center.
One of our soccer beats from this year, Henry Costco, is here today. Henry, how we doing?
Pretty good, but the men's soccer team isn't doing so great after their game last night. Lucas is dancing at me.
And speaking of Lucas, Mr. Lucas Kleinmeyer, men's soccer as well as women's basketball. How we doing, Lucas?
Yeah, I'm also feeling the pain of men's basketball. But women's basketball had a big win against St. Bonaventure yesterday, so that's positive.
Putting the bowling in Bowling Green, as I said, the football team, Mr. Sean Connolly here to talk about them. Sean, how we doing?
Yeah, Falcons go bowling for third straight year. They beat Western, and then preview against Ball State on Saturday.
And last but certainly not least, doing most of the heavy lifting once again, Mr. Ben Korak here for volleyball and hockey. How we doing, buddy?
As always, yeah, it's always great when you get a regular season MAC championship for volleyball, and hockey took essentially a split weekend, so some pretty good stuff out of hockey from Minnesota.
We're going to get into the action in just a minute. We're going to step away from some station identification first, but before we do, we want to touch on what's going on next door in our sister station of Falcon Radio, where you can tune in for 90s November to catch all your favorite 90s hits throughout the end of this month. You can tune into Falcon Radio by looking for it on bgfalconmedia.com. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get right into the action talking about volleyball in just a minute. You're listening to the Zig Zone on 88.1 WBGU.
This is Lucas Kleinmeyer, and you are listening to 88.1 FM WBGU Bowling Green, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone. We're going to get right into the action here. So, Ben, why don't you take us away? Let us know what happened with volleyball.
Yeah, it's they took 2 wins against Ohio. Very good wins on the season, but even better when you put into perspective a regular season MAC championship. I'll pull up the final record right here. Actually, I forgot what it is. 16-2. Actually, the only 2 losses being to Central and Eastern Michigan. Central, who finished second place at 15-3. Eastern, who ended up missing the MAC. They started really hot early and then really fell off a cliff. But yeah, the Falcons have the best record in the MAC. They get the first seed. The MAC tournament this coming week is in the Stroh Center, which is a huge advantage for Bowling Green. Obviously, just a couple miles from, I'm sure, all the girls' houses, and you get the home court advantage. And yeah, it's just fantastic to see Danielle Tomic continues her legacy as probably the best volleyball coach in the history of Bowling Green. So some great stuff.
And you want to talk about continuing that legacy as a coach here at Bowling Green, and another MAC regular season title to add to the accolades, but you'd certainly stand to think that they're not done yet.
Falcon Media. A group of student media organizers.
Oh, but system error here.
Oh no!
Oddball there.
I'm sorry. What was your question, Holden?
Just you'd stand to think, building Tomic certainly building on the legacy a little bit, picking up the regular season championship with the team, but looking ahead, it doesn't seem like their momentum should be stopping.
Yeah, no. I mean, the opponents that they could face in the next round and will face in the next round, Western Michigan, who they beat earlier in the year in a 5-set match and then a 3-set match sweep. They beat Western twice this year. Western plays Buffalo in the first round of the MAC tournament, and Buffalo was a team that Bowling Green swept in their place. So some pretty solid stuff, at least for the first round coming from BG. They always have to face Central Michigan, who's one of their losses. They don't have to, but it's pretty good chance that they're going to face Central Michigan down the line, possibly in the championship. That's the only place they could meet them. The other opponents, Ball State and Toledo, quite sizably less good than Central Michigan, I would say. So I like the Falcons' chances. I think a lot of us know that you take the hot team over the good team all the time, but I said this to Chaz McNeil earlier. I think in the case of BGVB, they're both the good team and the hot team. I think they're the best team in the Mid-American Conference. They finished the season, I think, on 13 straight wins, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, that's just irreversible streak. Yeah, they're doing fantastic. A lot of momentum, and staying in the Stroh Center can only help.
And not only 13 straight wins, but you look at the number of those wins that were sweeps for the team. I mean, that really certainly stands out. You had a run of, I want to say, like 6, I think, in a row that were just straight sweeps.
I think this is the first 5-set match since Eastern Michigan, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, the last game against Ohio was the first 5-setter since Eastern Michigan. If that's true, but I mean, yeah, they're not only beating teams, especially down the stretch with easier opponents. They're really just dominating them. They even had a tough match against. We were saying how NIU was a really tough opponent for them, and they swept them in both. Even though the sets were pretty tight, they ended up coming away with 6 straight set wins. This team is just so impressive. There's not a whole lot that they can't do. They set very well. Their back row is very good. Their strikers, as we know, their hitters are amazing. Lauren Hovey, Mia Tyler, Alexis Mattil, Jessica Andrews, all operating as a high level. You've got depth there. Your back row of Lindsay Lupinta, Sydney Hernandez, and Avery Anders have been so strong. Your aces have gone up in the last couple games. Lauren Hovey's stats have gone up in the last couple games. She would probably be my nominee for our Athlete of the Week this coming week. I mean, she had 23 kills in the second game against Ohio and 16 in the other game and hit above 350 for both. I mean, she was just absolutely amazing. Amanda Otten, I think, had closing in on 80 assists on the weekend as well, and that's not uncommon for this Falcon team. It's just so impressive to watch game in, game out. Ohio gave them a run yesterday, but I think that was more so due to Ohio just having nothing to lose. They had to win the game to stay in the MAC tournament. They didn't win. Toledo did. Toledo's in instead of Ohio now, so I think that's why they gave BG just a little bit of run for their money at the end.
Now, I want to break down the team slate for the actual tournament. Bowling Green seeded 1 and hosting the MAC tournament, as we've said.
Yeah.
Central Michigan, the Thorn and Bowling Green side earlier this year, sitting at 2nd overall. Those 2 teams will have the bye. And so then the 2 first-round matches are number 4 Western Michigan versus number 5 Buffalo, and number 3 Ball State versus number 6 Toledo. Ben, tell me, what do you think about those matchups? Who do you expect to see rise to the top there?
So you're asking me to fill out my bracket right now?
If you want to call
I think,
it that.
Do it. Give us your bracket.
Bracketology.
Do it.
Okay, here's what I think. I think
season.
we get a rematch in the MAC tournament. I think Western's going to beat Buffalo in that first match, 4:30 on Friday, November 22nd. I think Ball State looked really good down the stretch. Toledo really didn't. They started hot and then kind of were in the second half of the year. So I think Western and Buffalo and Ball State are going to win their first 2 matchups. That means Ball State will play Central Michigan and Western will play Bowling Green. I think that's the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seed actually.
Controversial picks there.
Yeah. I like Bowling Green against Western. I think they match up very well. Their hitters are much stronger than Western's blocking. Non-highly blocking teams struggle against the Falcons. Central and Eastern are both very high blocking teams, and they were the only two to beat Bowling Green this season. So I think Western's lack of blocking is going to serve the Falcons well. I think the Falcons beat Western. And I'm going to pull an upset. I think Ball State beats Central Michigan in their matchup. That would be the 4th matchup, 7:30 on Saturday, November 23rd. I think Ball State beats Central. I like a lot of their hitters, and that means championship. I'd have Bowling Green and Ball State. And another aspect of the story, Gwen Kroll, who is on Ball State right now, one of the leading blockers in the MAC, is an ex-Falcon, a transfer from Bowling Green last year to Ball State. So we'll see her. Just, I mean, in this tournament alone, Katrine Trebahovska for Buffalo, one of the leading attackers in the MAC, is a transfer from Bowling Green during like that COVID situation. Gwen Kroll is one of the leading blockers in the MAC. She's at Ball State right now. And then we know about Lauren Hovey and Amanda Otten and Mia Tyler. So most of the good players and most of the great players in the MAC came through Bowling Green and won one realm or another. And pretty good chance we see one of them in the championship match as well.
It feels kind of appropriate that a tournament with a lot of storylines that center themselves around Bowling Green is going to be hosted here in Bowling Green. Another one really sticking out to me being the potential and, in my opinion, likelihood of a rematch of last year's championship again, this time on Bowling Green's home court.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit rough to think about because you also have to remember that BG beat Western Michigan at home earlier in the year, which on one hand could mean you have their number, you can do it again, but it's hard to beat the same team 3 times. I mean, you could beat them twice, but beating a team 3 times, especially a very good team like Western Michigan, is tough. And Western Michigan's not the same team that they were when Bowling Green played against them. They did did dial it in quite a lot. They had a rough start to MAC play, and they did really good down the stretch, gained a lot of spots. I think they were sitting in 7th at one point. I think about 5 or 6 games into the MAC season, and now they're at that 4th spot, and they were rivaling for the 2nd spot before this weekend, and Central winning both. So, they're an impressive team. A rematch is always fun. It's going to be electric. I like BG's chances, but you never know. It's the MAC. Anything can happen. We've seen that the entirety of this year, so we'll see how it goes.
One thing that I noticed, Ben, 3 out of the 4 teams, obviously BG has the 11-game win streak, and then Central, Ball State, and Western all they've won 10 of their last 11. Is that something that seems like it's kind of an oddity? Is that something that's normal, and is that something that you're worried about?
Yeah,
BG?
I think it's because there's a huge separation between the top and the bottom. I mean, if we just look at the schedule, the bottom 3 teams have 2 wins or 1 win. The 4th to last team has 7. So there's a 5-win disparity between those bottom 3. I know the Falcons played Miami, NIU, and Kent State 3 of the last 5 weeks. A lot of teams had those down the stretch, those easier games. So I wouldn't read too much into the win streaks a lot, just like I wouldn't a whole lot into the Falcons. I would read into the quality of wins. And at least on the side of Bowling Green, the quality of wins have been tremendous. I mean, they've swept or had 4 sets in almost every single match. Haven't gone to 5 till the last one against Ohio. So just by eye test, the Falcons are better. But Central's still a tough team. Ball State gave BG a run for their money in the first MAC series of the year. Western played a tough match against the Falcons. Buffalo was swept by the Falcons, but they only played once. So those are teams right there. Toledo gave us a tough match in the first and took a set in our second matchup just I think about a couple weeks ago. So I mean, anybody can do anything realistically. It's again, MAC, everything's tight. They're only separated by 6 wins, the number 1 and the number 6 seed, and 15 and 13 encompassing a lot of those middle seeds as well. So everything's tight. Anything can happen. Bowling Green just needs to do what they do and come out and hit like they do best.
And looking at that field, you do think, based on your bracket projection, Ball State stands to be the biggest threat to Bowling Green, or just the most likely opponent in that championship?
I think they're the most likely opponent. I think the biggest threat to Bowling Green is that Western Michigan. I think that Saturday game against Western Michigan at the end of the championship is going to be the toughest game. They only play 2 games, so that's rough to say, but I think that's going to be the tougher game than the championship, just by looking at the way the brackets shake out. Western's going to have a chip on their shoulder. They beat BG in the championship last year, and then frankly got smacked in the second game against BG earlier in the home arena. They're going to come out with a vengeance. It should be tight. I'm predicting 5 sets for that one. I still like BG in that situation, but I think Western's the biggest threat just out of the history that the 2 teams have together, even in the Stroh Center as well.
One more thing I want to touch on the note of volleyball is the importance of the home field advantage. You can look across really any college sports, and there's a heavy mental side to it. It's college students anywhere from 18, 22-ish, however you want to ballpark it, and those little things do matter. And our volleyball team here at Bowling Green, certainly no stranger to strong home crowds. How important do you think that is to the team? And that was especially going to their last matches with Ohio, looking for the tournament.
It's everything. The team loves it. Head coach Danielle Tomich loves it. We knew at the start of the season, especially for that Ohio State series at home, she really got everybody out, packed. It was a MAC attendance record since 2011, I believe, and a BG attendance record for volleyball as well. So impressive stuff there. We know that volleyball can get them to pack in. And an important topic, I just thought about this. This coming weekend, football's away. Hockey doesn't play. Men's soccer's done. Women's soccer's done. What sports do we have going on in Bowling Green for anybody to go watch? It's volleyball, and it's playoff volleyball. And I think on a Saturday and Sunday, people are going to want to go to see Bowling Green hopefully win the MAC championship. I think they're going to pack it out a lot, and it's hard not to play well when you have almost 5,000 people screaming down the back of somebody serving. So I like what would that be? The seventh man of the Stroh Center, if you had to make a comparison.
One thing I would like to mention with volleyball, and I know Ben knows this, so Chaz and anyone who's been covering the team, was the new court the new floor that they added this year with the John and Mo Stansbury court. They won that. Coach Tomich talked a lot post game about how much the championship they're playing for something more than themselves and playing something more for John.
Do you want to read the quote that you read
Yeah,
before?
absolutely.
Definitely read the quote.
Yeah. So one of the quotes she said post game that really stood out to me was, "To win a regular season championship here at John Stansbury Court in front of our fans in the fashion that we won it feels so special." But more so, she went on to talk about how both of them meant a lot to the program, how much they supported through the ups and downs. She said this about John: "I've been thinking a lot since his passing, when he passed away in late October. I don't know if I would still be here in Bowling Green if it wasn't for John and Mo," which is kind of caught my eye, something that Tomich said. She also went on to say that there's a lot of stuff that he's done behind the scenes that people don't even know, and his unconditional support. And he was someone that believed more than I would in our team, and he communicated that to me. Which, for me, I mean, I don't cover the team, but obviously I've been to a couple of games. I've done a couple of things, but just been around them. I mean, that kind of moved me a little bit, and it also kind of makes you realize like what sports is more than just about winning championships. It's more about who are you winning it for and the overall storytelling of it and what it truly does mean.
Especially for that team, it's such a family that like it's not surprising at all that they had that connection with both John and Mo. And not just because their name is on the court, but I'm sure every game that they play, they always, when they come out onto the court, they wave to the regular fans that they see behind their bench. After games are over, they always go shake hands. They sign autographs for the girls that run up to them with pens and paper. Actually, I loaned a pen out to a fan earlier in the year and never got it back. But I'm sure I got a good autograph out of it from Alexis Mattil, so I'll let that slide. But it's such a family with the team, the fans, the coaches. They all love each other so much. It's one of the reasons they play such tight volleyball on the court and off the court. They're even better people than they are volleyball players. So
yeah, and actually the last quote that we had in our recap that you mentioned is about the program, how good they are as people more so than they are even volleyball players. Tomich won she concluded really her press conference by saying, "Our mark is not measured by the years we live, it's the impact we have on others. And John has made a huge impact on me, our program, and so many other people. Our team knows that it's playing for something bigger than themselves, and they've seen our community that gives and gives and gives, and that's what we tried to do back." So I think if you had a quote to sum up the volleyball program, I think that would be it.
That's almost perfect, I would say.
It's the kind of thing that really reminds you number of things, in particular even why any of us are here in the room, like the kinds of things that really go beyond the court or field or whatever playing surface may apply. So we'll hope to see Bowling Green have some success looking ahead to the MAC tournament. The first round will happen this Friday at the Stroh Center, and Bowling Green will play against the winner of match 1 between Buffalo and Western Michigan, I believe.
Yes, Buffalo and Western Michigan. The winner plays Bowling Green on Saturday at 4:30. Yep.
So we'll stay tuned for that. And as always, there will be coverage of that available on bgfalconmedia.com, as well as we will have broadcasts of at least the Bowling Green games, as well as maybe more of the tournament. So stay tuned for that. We're going to go ahead and move on to men's soccer. Men's soccer saw their Missouri Valley Conference tournament run end yesterday, and it looks like Lucas is hanging his head a little bit, so I can't see him around the screen, but Lucas, you want to talk to me about it a little bit?
I like to go to Henry first.
All right, Henry?
I almost cried, personally.
Yeah, I think Lucas is in too many tears to put his emotions into words right now, so I'll...
Just messing with my contacts now doing that. Just go on.
Right, yeah, so it was a 3-2 loss in double overtime for Bowling Green against Evansville, who had... I just want to give the credit to Evansville, I think, first. This is a team that went into the tournament. They hadn't won their last 2 games. They lost to Missouri State 6-1 in Springfield, 2 games before the MVC tournament started. And then they went into Kalamazoo, beat the team that's still ranked near the top 25 in the nation, Western Michigan, 2-1 in double overtime on the road. And then they went to the semifinal in Springfield, beat a top 10 team in the nation that they lost to 6-1 maybe 2 weeks before that, and they beat them 1-0. And then they went into the championship and beat Bowling Green in double overtime to make their spot in the NCAA tournament completely. But it was a tough loss. It was a game that the wind played a big factor in that one. We saw a few really odd goals, both of 2 of the 3 Evansville goals were results of almost own goals. The first one, Terry's deflection, just went right to Nacho Diaz-Barragán, right in front of the box for a goal. And then later on, of course, a corner kick, basically a corner kick. It was a free kick that was right in front of the flag that just went into the box, went off a BG player, and just went in. And that's just the game, right? Some things happen like that. And I think Lucas will agree with this. It was just an unlucky way to result. I think BG played one of their best games that they played all year. It was kind of a build-up since what we saw from Western and what we saw against UIC, what we saw against Drake. This team just looked unbeatable almost, especially in the MVC. And, they went into that game as the favorites, and they came out on the lower side of it. So, yeah, it's a tough loss for sure.
And looking, once again, you certainly want to give credit where it's due to Evansville. I mean, hard to get that hot and succeed, especially as the 5 seed, not really favored in any of those matchups. But are there any sort of things that stick out to you or Lucas, either of you, as things that could have helped control or manage that? Or do you think it was really just, more of a bad break for him?
Kyle Cusimano, 5th-year Defensive Player of the Year in the MVC, missed this game. I believe, was it due to injury? Lucas, what do you know?
Yeah, he was hurt.
Yeah,
he was out, and he exited the Drake game in the 50th minute. Don't really know what the injury was, but he didn't return, and we didn't really hear an official report on his injury, and he wasn't in the starting 11, which if he's not in the starting 11, that means he's not going to play, because if you even have a 50% Cusimano, you're going to start him because he's the Missouri Valley Conference Defender of the Year, so you're going to give him a start. So
how much do you think the game would have changed with Cusimano or playing a decent amount of the game, even at 50%?
One thing I was talking to Lucas about during the game is, and I know Coach Nichols, I think he said this at halftime, didn't he? They were targeting Mods. He's usually off the bench if he plays. He usually comes off the bench, especially later in the year. And Cusimano, since he was out, Mods got the start, and Evansville was targeting him pretty much the whole game. And if you have Cusimano in, that's not really a thing they can do, obviously, because you don't have that defensive weak point. And again, nothing against Mods. He's a great defender. He's played a lot of great games this year. He put up a good effort in the championship game.
Yeah, to answer Ben's questions, I think it changes massively, because I don't believe they give up one of those 2 goals on set pieces if Cusimano's in. And it's really... I feel really bad for Mats Christensen, because he's someone who last year is a freshman coming over from Copenhagen, Denmark, and he's a traditional midfielder. And they have so many injuries in the back line, which makes him forced to play in the back line, which is not his position. And he gets a Missouri Valley Conference all-freshman team despite that. And then he comes into this season, comes into the year hurt, misses the first couple of games, then starts, and then down the stretch loses his starting spot to Kyle Blasigame or Jake Bergen, however Nichols was starting, either one other. But Christensen was, like Henry said, was off the bench towards more the end of the season. And then he has to come in because Cusimano's hurt, and he puts him back into the back line, but not even in the middle like he did last year. He's putting him back to the left, which he's never played before, and he's playing in the championship game. So Evansville was just targeting the entire game down that sideline, because they know he's inexperienced and he hasn't played that position before, which give Evansville credit. You attack the weak point of each team, so give them credit. And then the third goal, like Henry mentioned, corner kick, the win was in their favor. It was a wicked ball.
That could have happened to anyone.
The
best defenders in the world give up own goals. Like, how many goals?
The win was so powerful to the point, I don't even know if Mads saw the ball. It just hit his head, and all of a sudden it's in the roof of the net, because the win was so powerful. It swung all the way to the goal line. And your natural instinct as a defender, the goal line is head the ball out, head it up. So as you do, the ball heads up and hits the top of his head and goes into the net. And I feel bad for him, because he's someone who probably honestly didn't have the season probably he wanted. And now he probably has that hanging over his head, thinking he probably cost his team something. And really he didn't, because they played good. And Evansville was just on an absolute insanity run, defeating Western and Missouri State. And they're very deserved champs. So give them credit when credit's due.
And I think despite our obvious disappointment with the result, it is important to look at not only this championship game as well as the whole tournament run in a vacuum. I would argue, like, not necessarily the position you expect BG to even be in there. I mean, can you really be too, like, obviously losing in a championship game is never going to feel good, but can you really consider it a disappointment or like a failure by any means to lose in such a way, especially when you look at the types of runs other teams had?
Well, the season's not over. Yeah, we don't know until tomorrow at 1 o'clock. They could still get the NCAA with a large bid. Now it'll be a little difficult, but not ruling it out by any means. They still have 12 wins this season, and 6 losses and 2 draws, and they beat a couple of really good opponents and were nationally ranked at one point during the season. So that works in their favor, but we'll see then. But I remember talking to Nichols in my preseason preview before the season started, and I asked him, I said, just define success for me this season. And he's told me we need to be near the top of the conference, top 3, so they finished towards the top, and they need to be in the MVC championship game. They were in the MVC championship game. So both things he told me in preseason for their goals, they made. Obviously, yeah, you want to win it because you get an automatic bid to tournament and you win a championship. But if that was his standards, I don't know what else really would have changed. And especially if they get a bid Monday, there's no way you could chalk up the season as anything but a success, depending on what they did. And
by what you just said, you were Cusimano away from a Missouri Valley Conference championship. If you really thought that he influenced the game, and I would tend to agree with you, definitely, especially if you keep one of those goals out and everything goes to overtime. You saved you would have saved yourself the season. Essentially, it's one player away from completely different look.
Yeah, I think the added thing of BG being favorited going in against a fifth-seeded team, if it was a game where they lost to Missouri State at home, I think we have maybe a bit of a different emotion going into it. But yeah, I mean, it definitely did have an influence for sure.
So, I mean, you talked a lot about it might be a long shot to make the tournament at this point, but what do you think is, if they do, what's the most likely place they could play, or most likely scenario, do you guys think?
Well, the most likely scenario is that they don't make it, just as of right now. So 48 teams make the men's soccer NCAA tournament. It's not 64 like basketball, it's 48. Bowling Green was ranked 50th in RPI before the game on Sunday. They're now down to 57th, which RPI is a ranking of every single team in Division I, not just top 25. And so you have to think about, obviously, the 21 conference winners make it, but also 27 non-champions win it. And I know me and Lucas were talking about a lot of lower seeds are winning tournaments, which doesn't help because that means a lot of top 25 teams will take up those non-conference winning bids rather than some lower teams that were outside the top 25, which doesn't help BG in any case.
I mean, even if you just consider the Missouri Valley Conference, the auto bid, and then the other teams with higher in RPI, that would be 3 teams in that conference alone ahead of BG, right?
Yeah. So they're 4th, right? Missouri State's 10th. Western Michigan's still 29th, even though they lost in the quarterfinal. Evansville is now up to 48th, and Evansville is getting in for sure. So and
that's in a conference too that certainly no slouch, but not the premier conference in college soccer by any means.
The MVC is very underrated for soccer, especially this season. I mean, I know I'm biased because I covered the team, but I think Bowling Green should get in, and obviously Western Missouri State are going to get in. Well, most likely they're not going to get in. They're the caliber of team that can get in. They have the talent that can compete. Yeah. It's those road losses, I think, that you look at early in the loss to Evansville on the road, the loss to UIC on the road, and if they beat UIC 4-1 at home in the quarterfinal, you just look back at those games like. If they have different results in those, we might be talking about a different story. I believe, though, there are 4 capable NCAA tournament teams in this conference, but I don't think NCAA is going to give it to them. The Big Ten, the ACC, Sun Belt, those are like the premier conferences where they'll always look towards them before they look towards a Missouri Valley team that didn't win their conference title.
There's 8 ACC teams in the top 20 right now. So factor in 7 of those are going to take up spots. Non-conference spots. So that's just one example.
It's the game itself. I think a lot of it disappointing is just because this I'm sure Ben knows this, already knows. Everyone here who has a beat or has been around a team, you get to know these guys and you get to be around the coach and you get to see him almost every day and you cover all the games. So you see how well they work, how they are as a person, the ups and downs, and you've seen their best wins, their best losses. So I feel for these guys a little bit on a personal level, but in the end, they just didn't get it done. I mean, that's just the way the game goes. Sometimes a ball or a win or it doesn't go your way.
I don't want to be one that sits here and criticizes the format and criticizes how it happens, but and I know this can happen to any team, and we can sit here and say any team loses because of the format, but I don't think a single elimination game format is accurate in not only describing what team should win it, but how games should result in some cases, especially when you're playing in overtime and golden goal scenarios, which has a lot of different factors.
Yeah, there's so many formats, but I've always liked a neutral site like what men's basketball and baseball does, but if you're not going to do that, I like what volleyball does, where if you win it, the entire tournament's just at that place. Because soccer, BG did get a home game, but that was it. and then the semifinal, and then the championship game was in Missouri because Missouri State won the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But for Drake, the 2 seed, who were a game away from winning the regular season, all they got was a bye week. They didn't even get a home game in the playoffs, which makes no sense to me. So they just got a bye week.
So the way that I think what the world kind of it's kind of an odd way to put it, but the way the world has determined the easiest way to do an elimination format tournament in soccer is to have 2 legs. So have a combined score between 2 games, have 1 home game and 1 away game. And I think if you're doing that in America, obviously America hasn't adapted. They haven't adapted in the MLS. They do elimination in the MLS.
Yeah, MLS did, and they've changed their playoff format every 2 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There, you are encroaching on the problem. Is hockey used to be the same way, especially Bowling Green benefited from that and the national championship run because, like, if you have a great first game and you like, and I'm gonna put it in hockey terms because that's what I know. If you have a 6-2 game, you're not playing any offense the second game.
Right.
You're playing everybody back at all times.
Right,
It is a boring game to watch. Nobody's gonna care. Everybody's just gonna see the final score, and the team can win 4-0, 3-0, and they're still gonna lose. Their efforts essentially mean nothing.
True.
So there's not a great way to do it. I think single elimination probably is the best, but it does just suck that like you have one bad game and especially in the landscape of a college sport where there's less games played than maybe like a major sport. It does suck that you're because if you play a 3-game series and see who truly is the best, you're going to be playing more games in the playoffs. The champion will than the games in the regular season. So it's just a rough situation.
It's the kind of thing where it feels like it doesn't paint an accurate picture every time of what the teams may really be composed of. But at the same time, you also can't offset and like sort of reward a team for not showing up on one day. You know what I mean? I do think there's like a benefit to single elimination in that regard. You have to show up.
It gives an opportunity for the 5 seed Evansville to go.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, you're
we're
good.
talking about how bad the system is. Evansville played 3 games on the road. They played 2 games in Springfield, 1 game.
They played
and
the
they
top
won
3
all
teams
3.
in the
Yeah,
valley.
and they won.
and
So
they still beat them. You still have to win the games no matter what the format is.
yeah, again, that's a single
Just
elimination
win, baby,
thing, I
as they
think,
say.
as opposed to how much
I will
advantage.
say the positives though from the game. Jake Lane wasn't amazing, and I think that is a statement game for him to next season. I think you'll see him in the starting 11 on one of the wings. He came on the bench, got the assist to Andrew Schaefer, the game-tying goal, and then he got the go-ahead goal to put him up 2-1 before halftime, putting on a nice couple step-overs into the box and finished with his left because he doesn't have a weak foot. He's both right and left-footed and just good skill. So great performance from Jake. He probably would have been my man of the match for that game.
Yeah, the reason he hasn't been in the starting lineup lately is just his defensive impact isn't necessarily there, especially compared to Schaefer. And I think we've seen better things from him. I think he's improved throughout the year, as well as the whole team has improved defensively. But also his offensive production is kind of just outweighing that to the point where it's tough to kind of not put him in the starting lineup anymore.
Yeah, he made the all-tournament team for the MVC, and so he had a great tournament run. I think you're finally seeing him move towards that starting 11 to a little bit next year because like Henry said, he wasn't in it because of his defensive ability because he started against Wright State at the beginning of the year and even the first 2 games I want to say, and he gave up a penalty kick and was just out of position on every transition. So then they just were like, you'll just be an off the bench guy, which is what he was for most of the year. But I think now he's definitely locked in and ready to be a starter. So that's a positive to look forward to. But also, I don't think you could say that was Terry and Painter's best game. I don't think Terry didn't really have a lot of chances, and Painter had like a couple half chances. So
Credit to Evansville for
yeah,
that.
give big credits to Evansville, especially Nacho Garcia, their center back. He was
He's a
very
beast.
Good.
He's a
very
beast.
good.
Brief aside, just on that same note, mentioning Painter and Terry not necessarily being present in the way you'd hope in that game, and looking ahead to next year, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Don't do it, Holden.
Kuzamano and Brendan Graves, the goalkeeper, both 5th years, isn't that right?
Yes,
So
correct, yeah.
Not looking to return next year. They'll be out of here. What do you anticipate? Do you have a ballpark of the team? The landscape of it looking into next year?
Well, I mean, I hate saying this because their season could still be alive depending on if they get money. But yeah, Graves is a huge miss next year. He's played every game for them in goal since 2021. He has been the most consistent player for this team, and he's been a great ambassador in the community. He's a local product from Perrysburg.
I was gonna say he was like that in high school too. Like he played like every single game from freshman year on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's one of the captains. He is a core player, and obviously in goal you're going to be losing him. That's a big miss. Kusamau is a big miss. Erlinson, who had to be huge in this game, is going to be gone. That's his 6th year. So that's 3 of your starting 4 back line if you include Graves. Only returning is Peacock, so you're already losing a massive chunk back line. Blasingame and Bergen are both out of eligibility after this year too, both graduating. They were your 2 starting center midfielders. And obviously next year you probably put Christensen in there, who's been starting sometimes too. You're losing Alberto Anaya, who's your attacking number 10. And then you're also losing Taylor Dyson, who had an assist off the bench. He's been a very serviceable player. And you're losing Rodrigo Silva, who was a good depth piece in the back line. So they're losing about, all in all, 6 starters
Both.
next year.
Well, we
Both
said
captains.
when we were talking, or you guys, I guess, were talking about men's soccer at the beginning of the year. You said this is going to be the year to do it, with the veteran presence that they had and
Yep.
what they were losing going
Yeah,
into.
this is
next year.
debatably the best roster that Nichols has had in 16 years. I think it's not crazy to say that it's the best roster he's had.
Yeah, it's up there. It's up there for sure. I think if you asked him, he would go to those NCAA tournament teams in 21 when they won the games where his son was on and he scored the game-winning goal. They had Joey Apononu for a couple of years, who's now an MLS player, and along with Jacob Erlinson, Josh's brother, who's a professional player as well. But, I mean, those names on paper might look better, but attacking-wise, this is the best team he's had, without a doubt. They haven't had, Terry and Painter alone had 25 goals compared to 2 of them. Last season, this team scored 27. They almost scored as many goals between the 2 of them as the team did all of last season. So I think offensively, I don't think you can. I think that's easy that this is the best offensive team they've ever had.
So we'll have to just, I guess, see what happens with tomorrow's selection show and keep a watchful eye on the men's soccer team. But we're going to move on a little and pivot. We're going to talk about some men's basketball because the men's basketball had a couple of games last week. Big win at home, 107-43 against Taylor, followed up with a loss in East Lansing against Michigan State, 72-86. Already take me through the Taylor game first, will you?
So obviously the Taylor game, you look at the box score and it's fantastic. Obviously they were playing a Division III opponent in Taylor, but 107 points is insane. Like I believe that all positives, like no matter who you're playing, are fantastic for a growing team, especially like this one that has so many new players. We mention that every single week, but it's true. And they played phenomenal. There were about 5 different people on that team that scored in double digits. Marcus Johnson, who has probably been the most popular player of this team, he scored 19 points. Javante Campbell had 12. Yusuf Kayat in his second start with the team scored 11. Braylon Green off the bench, who from Arizona State, he's a sophomore. He scored 15 points, and Derek Butler scored 11. So those were your double-digit scores for the Falcons against Taylor, and they really dominated in all areas. They dominated in points off the bench, rebounding, three-point shooting, just every single aspect of the game. They played their best basketball all season in their first win of the season.
It's the kind of thing that we talk about a lot, looking at football teams that play, FCS competition early in the season in their non-conference slate. Like, okay, you expect there to be a certain result, and you have to take care of business to a certain standard. And it feels to me like they certainly did that in that game.
Oh, definitely, yeah. They knew they were the better team, I think, going into the game, and they really proved it throughout the night. They, like I said, dominated in all areas. And like you mentioned, this was a game that they expected to win. Like, you have to go on this game with the expectation that this is the game where you see what you're going to be able to do, and they really proved it. And you got to see guys that hadn't checked in the game this season, guys like Greg Spurgeon, Jackson Pardon. He's the son of Brandon Pardon. He scored his first collegiate points of his career when he checked in the game, the freshman. Jemai Felt, who was out with injury for 2 seasons, he also scored his first collegiate points as a Falcon, and it was a really long time coming, if you know the story about Jemai. And then another guy, Preston Squire, he did play Division III basketball, but he did score. He scored his first points with the Falcons of his Falcons career, I should say.
And another thing that I thought was very positive about that is, like you said, 5 Falcons in double-digit points, even against a team that we know the Falcons should beat and beat handily. I think it's positive to see. We kind of know the story of this team is a lot of guys from different places coming in, and Todd Simon trying to piece the puzzle together. And it feels like there's a very high number of these new guys who are able to make an impact immediately.
Yeah, I think at the beginning, the first time we come to Zig Zone, we talked a lot about, we're discovering he's going to have to figure out who the guys are on this team. Like, who are the stars? Because you lost Marcus Hill, and you lost Rashawn Agee, and you lost Jathan Spurgeon, who is now playing overseas for the Sydney Kings back in Australia where he was born. So you lost kind of your big three of that season, and now you have to discover who are your guys to go to on this new team, and we've really discovered it over the past 2 games. It's pretty apparent. Marcus Johnson is one of them. Obviously, he's played phenomenal basketball over these past couple of weeks. Javonte Campbell, who I think is really underrated, he's scored 12 points, but he's a force defensively. He's involved in all aspects defensively. He had 2 steals against Taylor, so I feel like he's a very solid defender who can also score on the inside. He did make a couple threes that game, against Taylor, which we hadn't really seen before, but he's mostly an inside scorer. And then third, I think it's either going to be Yusuf Kayat or Trey Thomas, but Trey Thomas is more of he runs the offense, so he's more focused on creating passes, setting up plays, than actual scoring. And I think Kayat is mostly focused on scoring.
So I want to then move ahead to the game that I think probably had way more eyes on it, being in the national spotlight. Tell me about the game at Michigan State.
First off, one of the most incredible experiences of my life to be able to go to that game. So it was really awesome at the Breslin Center, and one of the best crowd atmospheres I think I've seen of any arena ever. But yeah, this was their biggest challenge of the season, at least non-conference wise, by far. I don't think anyone really going into this game expected them to win. They had a 2% chance, according to ESPN, to win this game headed into it, and they really outperformed their expectations. They scored 43 points in the first half, so it was a tie heading into the halftime. But they really played phenomenal coming right out the gate. They had a double-digit lead in the first half. They were playing really consistently. It was just towards the end where they really started to unravel. The last 7 minutes and 11 seconds, they scored 0 points as Michigan State went on an 18-0 run. So it was more just, I think, fatigue started to set in throughout the game. You could tell that they were really like playing as hard as they possibly could because of the competition that they were up against, and they just sort of sputtered out near the end.
I actually went to this game as well as a fan too, and you mentioned like the fan atmosphere. Like, they were out of the game. Like when I think we were up at 12 at one point, I can't remember. Like they were silent. So
yeah.
we took that aspect out of the game that's so big in those types of situations. And I went to the game with one of my buddies who goes to Michigan State, and he's like, this game's giving me James Madison flashbacks from a year ago that they lost. And I remember even texting him after that game. I was like, watch, we'll see James Madison go to the tournament, which they did. I'm hoping that trend as well. I mean, like I said, that BG can make the tournament as well. So I thought that you walked out, same with football. I've said it a million times on the Zig Zone. You walked out with a loss, but in a way, a moral win.
And just the finishing score wasn't telling of how.
Oh yeah,
no, absolutely was
BG,
not. No.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know the official stats, but I think BG led for the vast majority of that game.
BG did lead for about 20 minutes and 30 seconds of that game. So they were in the lead for the vast majority of it.
And for a lot of those minutes, probably 15 of it, it was 1-2 possession game maybe, even when Michigan State led. So, I mean, you're talking about a game where Bowling Green played to a T until the last 2 minutes. And then, granted, Michigan State is a better team. I don't think any of us are arguing that, but Bowling Green, huh?
Homer, I said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Michigan State basketball
Simpson?
guy. But no, not Homer Simpson. Yeah, but
that's not up Artie's alley.
They are a better team.
Yeah.
Nobody is. Oh my gosh. Family Guy over the Simpsons. We're not. I'm not arguing Bowling Green's a better team, but
What are you arguing?
I'm arguing that they played a very good game.
They did play a very good game.
They played an insanely good game.
They played an insanely good game.
Probably the best game. That game was probably better played than I saw any of last year's.
I think that was one of the best.
That's probably the best played game I've seen at Bowling Green.
I think that was one of the
basketball.
best coach games of Todd Simon's career, at least in
wouldn't
Bowling Green.
And what did Izzo say about Marcus Johnson? Like, he complimented BG really well. Like,
okay, so Izzo compared Marcus Johnson to Popeye Jones, Jokic, and Magic Johnson, and this was all in the same press conference. And he also praised Todd Simon, Coach Luers Narn, Tum Tum, who we have a story out about Falcon Media. Tyler Cavils wrote it. He talked a lot about him. He used to play for Michigan State, so you could see like such a respected coach like Tom Izzo. He really believes in this program. He talked about how, he said that this was the toughest double-digit win they ever had in years because of how well Bowling Green played in the Breslin Center.
And you want to talk about a double-digit win, too. It was obviously hard-fought, as we've discussed. I have down in particular the most it looked like we were going to win to me. The Falcons were leading 64-56 with under 11 minutes to go.
So what happened was Trey Thomas picked up his 4th foul, and they had to take him out of the game. And that's sort of when things started to unravel. And that was about at that point where we were up by those. It was 11 minutes left. So when you took Trey out of the game, he's the guy that keeps the offense organized. He's the guy that keeps them sort of in check. So when you have to take him out of the game, things started to sort of unravel. And then Sam Towns as well. He picked up a lot of fouls. And that's your primary rebounder against a very tall Michigan State starting lineup. So when you lose the rebounding battle and then you lose the guy who's really the floor general for your team, things are not going to run great offensively.
It's kind of a recurring issue for men's basketball then, because last year AG had a huge foul problem, that he was the best player on the floor a lot of the time, but he couldn't spend a lot of it on the floor because he picked up so many fouls early. Marcus had some foul trouble games. Jason Spurgeon had some as well, but that was more due to the lack of big men. But I mean, now, like, Trey Thomas is a huge part of that team, and being fouled out, one of your better players has to be on the floor, and foul trouble just plaguing him for the last year or so.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't usually check out of games like that. He's usually maybe picks up 1 or 2 fouls per game, but Sam Towns has been checked out of 3 of the past 4 games due to fouling out of the game. He's picked up 5 fouls in at least 3 games this season. And just to give you guys some perspective, they had about 26 personal fouls against Michigan State. They had 28 rebounds, so they almost had as many personal fouls as they did rebounds that game.
It's one of those situations where you obviously can't set the measuring stick for the entire season based off of one game, but it certainly does paint the blueprint a little bit of, the kinds of things that they'll be able to have a lot of success if they can manage. The foul trouble. I remember seeing the graphic while I was watching the game. 4-4-3 for our, 3 guys with 4, another with 3 of the 5 players in the game at one time, and it's just not a good spot.
Yeah, and I know I'm pointing out a lot of negatives about this game, but I really do believe this is a victory for them. You walked into a tough place to play. You played phenomenal for most of the game. It just sort of towards the end where things started to fall apart, but obviously, I'm sure the players don't see it as a moral victory like I'm talking about right now, because you were beating Michigan State by a double-digit leads multiple times throughout the night. So I'm sure they weren't too happy to take the loss. But I really thought this was a phenomenal game for Todd Simon. I think they really proved a lot to a lot of the nation. And by the way, Marcus Johnson went viral on social media.
I was literally about to say that. I was like, I don't know if you've browsed X recently.
There
was everyone's predicting that he's going to be the.
What was the guy from NC State?
DJ Burns.
DJ Burns.
He's giving DJ
that
Burns.
He's going to be that sweetheart everyone grasps onto in March.
You can't bring up NC State now, Ben, because if you bring up NC State, we're going to think of Marcus Hill.
I know. I'm sorry.
Is one of my favorite all-time one-time Falcons.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how, I said something to Sean about this before the show. Can we talk about how eerily familiar it feels to, the football team's situation with their out-of-conference away slate at the start of this year? It's obviously not a win.
Thank goodness men's basketball doesn't have a homecoming game then.
Yeah.
If you think of this stuff, men's basketball, the non-conference games this is all about getting good experience in playing teams like Michigan State that are better than you, because they're never going to get in the NCAA tournament with an at-large bid. No MAC team is. It's just not going to happen. So the only thing that really does matter is your conference games. So I think as long as they keep getting better and get into MAC play, then it should be good.
Yeah, Lucas, you mentioned that, and these games are mostly for deciding who's going to be in your starting lineup for the MAC. Obviously, I think the starting lineup you're seeing now with Yusuf Kayat, Marcus Johnson, Javante Campbell, Sam Towns, and Trey Thomas. I think that's going to be the lineup for most of the season, just based off what Coach Simon's been saying, based off the fact that it's been the same lineup for about 3 straight games now. So I think that's going to be the lineup for the season. I think he's just mostly trying to figure out now.
He subs out a lot.
He does.
It's every couple minutes where 1 to 2 players are coming in, and that's cycles of him doing that all throughout half.
Well, we don't get a lot of bench production from this team usually. They only had a couple of points off the bench against. They had 6 points off the bench against Michigan State. So it's sort of, they do have a lot of depth. It just, they need to figure out how can you best use these rotations to maximize your bench.
And getting that experience too. That's probably why he's doing it so much.
I mean, you have guys like John Humphrey who were on the team last season who are coming off the bench now. He was a starter, kind of in and out starter for most of last year. But you also guys have like William Exact Jr., who's trying to figure out like where were the best to put him. He played 2 minutes against Michigan State. Jemai Felt, who's been out with injury for the past 2 seasons. You're sort of seeing him in the lineup more. I think he'd be a more versatile player, but he's kind of just learning more often.
I like the way Jemai Felt played against Michigan State. I really like. He seemed like a nice compliment to Sam Towns, like the same kind of player. And we just mentioned how it's been it's going to be rough to find a player like Sam Towns got into foul trouble. You need somebody to replicate what he does on the floor. I feel like Jemai Felt might be that guy to kind of step into that situation, get some boards, get some dirty points here and there. Do a nice job in the paint, which is what you were lacking a little bit last year. You're probably going to lack a little bit this year, but having a second guy off the bench, he's probably going to be one of the top forward centers, if I had to guess, coming off.
You speak about like points in the paint. We had 40 points in the paint. Michigan had 36, so we outscored them in the paint actually. Good. So it's just mostly we've become more of a shooting team. I think this year, because last year we didn't have strong shooters. It was mostly inside scoring for most of the game, and then I think just they have to be able to time their shots correctly, because you saw them take a lot of threes. They went 5 from 26 from 3, and I remember Coach, if they hit a couple more of those, I think they can beat Michigan State. I honestly believe that. I think for a long period,
and a few of those too weren't necessarily the smartest shots, but like
came out of necessity a little bit.
Yeah. So
shot clock winding down.
I do agree that like yes, a few of those do go in, then it definitely makes it a closer game.
You got to shoot him against MSU though.
But yeah, I mean, like that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't necessarily disagree with, but some of them weren't necessarily the most smart shot, the most smart shots.
I mean, you had to hit threes against the Spartans if you're ever going to walk out of that with a win.
Yeah.
Certainly a strong performance to look at despite the loss, and the Falcons will...
Holden, I just want to chime in here. I want to play a little over-under game. Over-under 2,000 students at Taylor University.
Under. My mom went there.
1,911 students at Taylor University. Over under 1,200 students at Aquinas College, who BG plays in a couple weeks.
Under.
1,113 students at Aquinas College. That's all I've got to say.
But tune into the silent night that Taylor brings. That's cool. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Like that's cool.
That is cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Like they do make national media, so like it's still a good win, I think.
Does that mean the entire school shows up for that game?
I literally think the entire school shows up.
So, yeah, I got a friend that goes to Taylor that do that every
year. It always looks really cool online.
It does.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a tradition for Taylor University where everyone goes on was it Christmas Eve for the game?
No, right? It's the week before finals.
Week before finals. So
they all that weekend, Friday before finals.
They all go to a home basketball game. They are silent for the first until they reach the 10th point, where they rush the field and they get as loud as humanly possible for
they started
a couple
that,
of minutes.
Because I know people kind of copy that. Like they were the ones who started it.
And then I think they all go to a Christmas party afterwards at I think the dean's place, or the dean hosts it, or something like that.
We need to start something for Bowling Green. Start
What's your suggestion?
My dad,
I don't know.
back at Central Michigan, he went there. They started at Central Michigan after the first point was scored, that they throw a bunch of toilet paper on the
Georgia Southern did that for their
games.
But
so back in the 80s, one of the RAs was like, hey, we need more attendance from our dorm to go to the basketball game. So they're all like, hey, let's just bring toilet paper, and when they score, just throw it on. And for the first game, couple rolls, next home game, everybody's there with a bunch of toilet paper. It was really cool.
We need to start one how the Red Wings do they throw the octopus. Throw something.
I don't think you do a dead falcon, but
no,
maybe something along the lines of that.
I think that's illegal, right?
It's got to be something. Yeah.
I mean, what sport would you decide it for anyways? Volleyball, hockey?
Probably hockey.
Hockey.
Hockey's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
Especially with hockey's history here, it feels like
I guess the Who's He Nobody is a pretty good one. I think that was started in the early 80s, around there, when they were really winning at a decent clip.
I like where they read the newspapers when the players come out.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It always sucks because it's completely dark, so you can't really even see the.
Those are newspapers too.
A lot of time.
They are.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So it boosts our.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely one of the. I would say probably about as good of an environment as we have. Gotta love those pre-games. We're going to move on a little bit. We're going to get to the women's basketball team. So we're going to go back to you, Mr. Lucas Kleinmeyer. Take us through a little bit of the action. They had 2 games last week. So
I was about to say, when did we leave off on this? So I'm assuming
Tuesday night, Cleveland State.
Did we recap Detroit? Oh, yeah, you did. I was on the Zig Zone. Apologies.
I was not.
Cleveland State. A lot of people probably don't know. They're actually one of the best, if not the best, Horizon League women's basketball team. They won the regular season title last year, didn't win the tournament, but they were projected this year to win the Horizon League again. They have, I believe, I want to say 3 players that are projected to be in the All Horizon League first team, and Colby Maples, one of their guards, was also projected to be the Horizon League Player of the Year. Unfortunately for her, she suffered a very bad injury when they played Bowling Green, and she had to be helped off the floor. So hope she's okay. Hopefully she can return this season, but it looked gross there. But for the team, Cleveland State, it's early in the season, and for Bowling Green for that game, they came out to a massive lead. I want to say they led by 15 by the end of the first quarter. And even so, Cleveland State kind of built back in their lead in the second quarter, but Bowling Green still kind of kept their foot on the gas and still managed to have a lead going into halftime, mainly because their three-point shooting was so good from Paige Kohler and also Amy Velasco. But the second half was just completely different. Cleveland State came out. They made adjustments. Bowling Green only made 5 shots in the second half. They went 5 for 18, I want to say. Velasco and Kohler just went cold. And unfortunately, so far this season, besides St. Bonaventure, which we'll talk about in a little bit, if those two weren't scoring, there really wasn't a third option. There really wasn't a whole lot of people because Erica Porter has not been playing good to start this year. Taya Ellis is more of your defensive player. Donahue is also one of your defensive players. You don't expect them to be your bucket and go-getters. So that was probably the main reason why I lost Cleveland State, too. They just shot cold, and Cleveland State came out, and they just kind of pretty much beat them in all aspects of the game in the second half, especially in the paint, turnovers, second chance points, you name it. They just completely turned it around the second half, and they're a very good team, and it was all about kind of growing and learning from that game. But then for this past Saturday against St. Bonaventure, a team that weren't picked to finish very high in the A10, very low. This first time actually St. Bonaventure came to the Stroh Center in a decade since the WNIT tournament. From start to finish, Bowling Green dominated. They seemed fully comfortable in all phases of the game, especially inside the paint. The screens that Moxie, Porter, and all their bigs set for Velasco and Kohler to find open lanes to the hoop was something that really caught my eye because they usually do it a couple of times a game, but they were doing it consistently, and there wasn't any drop-off in that game, which was very good to see. Kohler and Velasco once again had a great shooting day. But then also you got off the bench production from Kendall Moxie, who is a transfer coming in to Bowling Green. She did very good off the bench as well. Erica Porter had a semi-decent game too as well. She got near double-digit points as well. Taya Ellis was 1 point away from a double-double, which is also good as well. She had 9 points and I want to say 12 rebounds. She played phenomenal as well. Lauren Gherkin, the freshman from Findlay, Ohio, came off the bench, hit 3 massive big three-pointers. The team, it was just a complete team win from all areas, all facets. It was hard to pick a BG Falcon Media Food and Drink Guide player of the game, but we did give it to Taya Ellis. Complete a performance that was much needed because after 2 tough losses on the road to 2 Horizon League teams, Detroit Mercy and Cleveland State, they just needed a get back right game, and they did against St. Bonaventure. So now they're 2-2 on the year. Played great basketball, but now they're going to West Virginia, which is where I'll be leaving tomorrow with the team on Tuesday. That's going to be quite the experience for them, but it's also going to be a very, very tough game. And for later in the week, or I should say next Sunday, they play Ohio State on the road as well. So a couple of big non-conference games as well to wind out.
Kind of a sidetrack. I know you mentioned Kohler. What happened to her? Like, why'd she have a mask on? I must have missed something.
Yeah, first game of the season against Southern Mississippi. It was a pretty bloodbath, I would say. It was a very physical and kind of just sloppy basketball game. It was very much the first basketball game of the season. There were a couple instances during the game where they were trying to switch the floor and trying to give a pass to Kohler, and the pass would be short or she didn't come to the ball right away, and a Southern Mississippi player would intercept it, and I believe twice as they kind of both collided for the ball, they kind of just one collided heads on one occasion, the other one she kind of got elbowed in the face.
I remember watching on ESPN Plus. She was kind of taking a beating.
Yeah, she hit the
so.
floor 3 times, and 2 of the times were from collisions, just based off of passes that were a little short, and she kind of just collided in. The elbow underneath the basket, I remember, was actually on her, and she ended up fouling out, but she ended up getting a black eye from that I think she's now eventually healing. But
yeah, I was just gonna say I noticed it. I think on either Twitter or Instagram, and I just was like, "What happened? I missed something. And I didn't know exactly what happened."
yeah, and she is someone where she's had to step up last year because of Lexi being out still from last year and still not being back yet. She's been a warrior this year. She's been taking a lot more contact, especially inside the paint, than she did last year. She's been taking it well. She's been able to draw a lot more fouls than she did last year, and she's just all around been just continuing her progress from last season.
So a black eye won't phase her.
No, and
Good to
I
know.
asked the trainer, Matt St. Louis, how long she's going to be having that face mask for, and she's basically didn't really give me an answer. It's kind of just how long is it going to take for her face to heal. I don't really know what is wrong with her face. I know when I interviewed her after that Southern Mississippi game, her black eye was starting to swell, and she had a couple of big bruises on her nose as well. So I don't know if there's a...
It could just be a protective thing. Just to stop
just to make sure
anything from
getting
happening
worse.
again.
Yeah, and I think it's just probably just to protect her and just let them swell down and just try to get her back to full 100%.
Are we nearing the, like we mentioned in men's basketball, like nearing in on that starting lineup? We know who it's going to be. Are we nearing in that for women's basketball and who our starting 5 is and our next off the benches?
They haven't changed. It's been the same starting 5 for all 4 games. Porter, Velasco, Kohler, Ellis, and Donahue, which I've been pretty delighted with because usually that's not the case, especially for early basketball season. You usually like to see, especially if you have a lot of new players like both men's and women's team have, you like to see kind of like what's your right starting 5. The only issue I see with the starting 5 is when Lexi gets back, because when Lexi gets back healthy, she's going to start. And Fred Shimil keeps talking about how they wanted to play more big this year. You went and got Moxie. You got Christina Kulachkowska, who are both big players. You have Porter in your lineup. So are you going to drop one of Velasco and Kohler? Or are you going to play with 3 guards and then put Fleming in, which I think you probably have to do considering how well
the way Kohler and Velasco have been
how
playing,
well they've been playing. Porter has not been playing very well, but she's your biggest player, and you're really only big threat offensively in the paint consistently so far this season. We'll see what Moxie can do. Donahue and Ellis are defensive players. Maybe they'll get you a couple baskets. They might get to double digits, but they're more of your rebounders, steals, turnovers.
Who would be that first one kicked to the bench then? Would it be Donahue or Ellis? Just for, like, assuming Lexi
I think
that third
yeah.
guard?
That's a good question. I think Donahue. I think they would have to kick Donahue off, which is unfortunate because I think she's been doing pretty good. But
She is more of a guard defender, no?
Yeah, she is. And I think inevitably she's going to get that freshman slump a little bit where she'll go through a little bit of a stretch where you might have to take her out and then just put her on the bench and see how she responds. So I can probably see that. To answer the other part of your question, the first people off the bench, I think he's been playing everybody, mostly off the bench. The ones that have been playing consistently minutes off the bench has been freshman Lauren Gherkin, who I've been very impressed with. She's a very good 3-point shooter and a good rebounder. So she's kind of one of those bigs where she's kind of specialty is kind of just 3-point shooting and just rebounding as well. But she's also been pretty good at passing the ball too so far I've seen as well. So she's been impressive. Layla Harrison, another freshman from Cincinnati, Ohio, she's been pretty impressive as well. She's been off the bench. She's one of the forwards. Can also play guard as well. She's been kind of playing all over the place position-wise. She's been pretty impressive. Emily Cecil was someone that played a lot off the bench as well. She's been playing consistent minutes off the bench. She didn't play against Cleveland State, which is kind of weird. I would assume she would get some minutes off the bench. And then I would say Kulachkowska has been the 4th player off the bench. And then Moxie. Moxie was 5. I think, honestly, unless...
Did Moxie not have a really good game against St. Bonnie's?
She did. That was her best game so far in a BG uniform. I would say, honestly, the 3 that for sure down the stretch of the season that you'll see off the bench is Gherkin, Moxie, and honestly probably Harrison at this point. Simpson's been off and on. Kulachkowska's been off and on. Cecil, I would assume she's usually can soak up some good minutes and give the guards a break as well. It would be interesting to see, but Shamila seems to be likes their depth on the bench, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they just go 10 players every game, unless injuries happen or a player drastically falls off, or something happens along the lines where they're going to just inevitably get that bench shorter.
It seems like it's obviously not a good thing. It almost seems like it's good that Lexi's not in the lineup to the start of the season. You get an extra spot to try some new players out before you get to MAC play. Like you mentioned, if she's in the lineup right now, you have to play her, Amy Velasco, and Paige Kohler. So you only have 2 spots to rotate people in, plus time that they're obviously getting some rest. So it might almost be better for the team as a whole and the depth of the team to see who you have with that extra spot.
Yeah, Henry was talking about it a little bit in Shamil's press conference was about the stats of Lexi Fleming. He said, hopefully it's a Merry Christmas, or what was his exact words? I know
he said we're going to have a happy Thanksgiving and we're going to have a Merry Christmas. That's what he said.
That does sound like something Coach Shamil would say. I remember saying is once Lexi's out there, you can't really reel her back in. She just is she's a wild card. She'll go all over. I mean, if anyone's seen Lexi Fleming play basketball, she's all over the floor. Her energy is unmatched to anybody. So once they put her out there, they know they really can't. They're going to have to ease her in, but when she's out there, she's out there. She's not going to be cautious in terms of protecting herself. She's going to play out how Lexi Fleming always plays basketball. So I honestly don't think she'll be there till MAC play, and I don't think I think that might be the smartest thing to do.
I want to look back real quick, Lucas, at that game before we look ahead, the one Saturday against St. Bonaventure. 51-point margin of victory, the largest for the Falcons against a D1 opponent in program history, and tied for the 4th largest margin against all opponents. That feels pretty significant.
Oh, yeah.
We always talk about these early games, being just small pieces of the puzzle and figuring out the landscape of a team. But I think that's a very inspiring sign to look forward or to look at when looking ahead. And one last thing I want to ask you, what's something you want to see against West Virginia? Because we've already discussed even just today that these out-of-conference tests are good to see how you stack up against elite competition, but they're not everything. What do you want to see from the team there?
I want to see fight. I think that's what every coaching team wants to see. And more so, Coach Graham Blanco talked about it post-game with us, was a big mentality they took into St. Bonaventure was to take it 1 quarter at a time. I would like that same mindset going to West Virginia. You know who you're going up against. If you can put together a very competitive performance where you're leading it in the game and you make it close, kind of really similar to what we just talked about men's basketball. I mean, they took it to Michigan State until the very, very, very end, until they pulled away. So, I mean, if they could do a performance similar to that where maybe it goes back and forth, maybe they're only down by single digits, maybe they even take the lead at some point during the game, I think that would be super. I think that's something that they'll take away feeling positive. I don't want to see them kind of go into the game, have a good first quarter, and then the last 3 they kind of just get blown out, because that's been kind of the case the first 3 games of the season. If you look at the numbers in all 4 quarters, they've been outscored every single quarter except the first. Obviously, that changes now with St. Bonaventure. I'm pretty sure now, if you look at the stats, they've now outscored everybody, considering how big they've blown out St. Bonaventure. So I honestly would say just take that 1 quarter at a time mentality, be competitive, but also just limit those turnovers, because they're still turning the ball over a little bit too much.
Lucas, you're going to have that broadcast for us from West Virginia, is that correct?
I will, 7 p.m. on WBGU 88.1 FM. Make sure you join. Ben Korak is my board op.
Tune in for that on that. Ooh, Ben Korak board hopping too.
I'm really excited, actually. First board op of the year, It'll be good.
It's always exciting.
Gotta get it in.
I'll issue a press release after it's over. Let y'all know how it goes.
Let them know.
Only your first board op is rookie numbers, at
Oh,
least to me.
wow.
At least to me.
I know,
Mr.
right?
Board Op over
Gotta
there.
I know,
pump those
right?
numbers up.
Do I get an intermission report, Lucas?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's go.
Intermission report.
Intermission report.
This is not hockey.
He's a hockey guy, guys. Let's just move on. It's fine.
You got to do it the way he knows how to do it. You got to
Gotta speak his language.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here for station identification, and when we come back, we've still got a lot more to talk about, including football, hockey, cross-country results. But before we go to this break, I'm going to throw you guys the first discussion question of the day. So really rack your brain. I was having trouble with this, and I think I know my answer. Give me the athlete, it can be anyone, random athlete that you miss watching. So a retired athlete, whatever sport that may bring to mind for you, could be a lot of different things, but I want you to think about that briefly. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back and talk about that. So don't go anywhere, because you're still listening to The Zig Zone Show on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Hi,
This is Tom Hamilton, voice of the Cleveland Indians. You're listening to all the high-flying action of Falcon Sports on 88.1 WBGU.
Hey there, BGSU graduate Jason Jackson from the Miami Heat here. Make sure to tune into the Zig Zone every Sunday at 4 p.m. on WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone show. Before we went to break, I asked our pulling a bit of a Carl Smith there on the title there. Before we went to break, I asked our room what.
Carl catching strays here on music.
That was like a month ago, man. Let it
I'll flip
go.
that one up for him.
Wow.
Before we went to break, I asked you guys to recall for me an athlete that you just miss watching, and really any sport. So anybody, feel free to take it away. Who you got?
Okay, I'm going. Unfortunately, I am a Bears fan, but there's one player I really miss watching for the Bears. Maybe not as well named. I miss Tariq Cohen. Like, if you don't know who Tariq Cohen
the
is,
joystick.
the human joystick, he was absolutely incredible for the Bears. He was so electric. He was a good runner, even better passing running back. He could return kicks. He could do it all for the Bears offense, and he was phenomenal. He always seemed like such a great individual. He was super involved in the community, and I really miss watching him play for the Bears. He did retire this year before the season started.
It's a deep pull.
You know, I'll go next because I'm staying in Chicago because I'm a Cubs fan. I know Ben loves this player. He's basically retired at this point. Javi Baez. Back.
Yes.
You miss him in his prime.
Don't
Back
even
in his prime.
mention his name.
I'm just going to read out his
I-
2018 numbers compared to his 2024 numbers. A 290 batting average, the 129 OPS plus, 34 homers, 111 RBIs. It's league leading. He was an all-star, second in MVP voting that year. In 2024, solid 184 average, 46 OPS plus. So he's obviously, I would argue that he's basically retired at this point. But
And look at the consistent decline every single season.
Okay,
after
but
that.
he is a legend.
he,
all right?
he's a Chicago legend.
He's a legend.
He's a Chicago
For
legend.
a
He was
year.
He's the complete opposite.
he was
for
a
Detroit.
big part. He was one of those young guys in that World Series team when that was full. All those veteran guys that
yeah,
really
where
brought
are
the
all
energy
of
to
those
it.
guys now?
Brian's
Not on the Cubs.
Brian's
No.
on the Rockies.
Rizzo's doing
Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo.
Rizzo's on the
Javi
Yankees.
Baez.
On the Bryant's basically
He was on
gone.
the
Hendricks.
Rockies. I don't know
Hendricks
where
is the
he's
only
now.
one who's still in Chicago. He was good. He's still.
How many of them are
Putting
playing well? Like the downfall of that team.
Rizzo-
this isn't even just like
They won a World Series. They won a
Yeah,
World
and then
Series.
all of them like
Yeah, well,
disappeared.
it was
after that.
an older team, which is what I mentioned. But yeah, Rizzo's probably the main guy who's still putting around. Hendricks he's throwing like 87 mile an hour fastballs in Chicago, but he's still doing okay. Chapman's doing well. Other than that, most of them are retired. But
As you guys know, I am a soccer guy. I don't expect anyone to know this person except maybe Henry, but Federico Higuain. He is one of the all-time Columbus Crew legends. He's the reason why I actually fell in love with soccer. I loved them. I love watching him play. He was amazing. He's a brother of Gonzalo Higuain, who is also a legendary Argentinian player. He was amazing. I tried to like mimic my playing style from him actually when I was like 7 years old because I wanted to play like him. He was great. He's one of the all-time great Columbus Crew players, and I miss him. I miss him so much.
that's crazy, bro.
Since I'm next in line, I'm sure Ben will probably agree with this one. Just inducted into the Hall of Fame, Pavel Datsyuk.
Yes.
My absolute favorite Red
Yes.
Wing. One of my probably favorite athletes of all time, just to watch. Even not as of like a hockey fan in general. That dude was an absolute magician.
Yeah,
with
literally.
the puck, and yeah, Magic Man.
He was wild.
Mickey Redmond called him Houdini. Like he was so good, and he was like people say he was ahead of his time. It's like he just I miss him every day, especially knowing what the product we have with the
He
Wings
was
right
like-
now. So I don't really want to get into that, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean he was so good with the Red Wings, and I miss him every day.
He was like the first of the like maybe not the first, but like a new era of hockey.
Yeah,
where
like
it's
2002.
like you
he
mentioned,
was
like
on that 02 team, but he stayed with the
that
Wings
joystick
and like
video game
Mhm.
type play. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it.
And
I
a lot of people like want to mimic
Yeah.
like his game, like growing up. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would probably say him.
I chose one. This is going to seem planned, but it's not. I chose Henrik Zetterberg.
That was a duo. That was the iconic duo.
That
in
was the
Detroit.
duo. I took the centerman. I always liked Zetterberg more than Datsyuk. I know that's kind of a hot take, but
He was captain.
Zetterberg
He
was
got the captain.
He was
so
the captain.
yeah.
He did it all. He won so many faceoffs in his career. He was great in the center. Didn't score a lot of goals. Had a ton of assists.
Yeah.
Had most of his points that way. Mostly a lot of them to Datsuk because they were the guys. Henry, I miss him every day. Still with the Red Wings organization. Still works for the Red Wings. Great dude. I miss him every single day.
we could sit here for another hour talking
Oh my
about
gosh.
good wings over those past year. I mean, Nick
Shanahan.
Lidstrom, Shanahan, yeah.
Cronwall.
Cronwall.
I miss so much.
Chris Osgood.
My pick is probably a little bit mainstream, especially if you live in this area, but I think it takes till you're about 10, 11, around that range to like really latch on and start like retaining things more about what you watch, and that was the age for me at least. And college football always has been my first love of sports, and as an Ohio State fan growing up, Braxton Miller just does not.
That's a good one.
Does not get much better than that.
I watched a video of his big walk-off throw. It was I'm pretty sure it was after they lost Virginia Tech. It was at Wisconsin. It was home against Wisconsin, wearing those weird Nike pro uniforms. And he had some crazy highlights, man. He was like.
To be that electric and dynamic as a quarterback, like Big Ten Freshman of the Year, 2-time Offensive Player of the Year, tears his labrum the year the team wins the Natty, comes back as an H-back, puts down maybe the most video game spin move of all time against Virginia Tech in a revenge game. I mean, just the highlights. There's so many. It's just.
I wanted him to succeed in the NFL man.
So bad.
But he never even got a chance at quarterback, really.
No, I didn't think that was going to happen.
He was like maybe 5-6 years ahead of his time. If he came into even college football like in 2020, 2021, he would have been a beast.
I mean, you look at the kind of offenses that build around like a Lamar Jackson type or those types of athletes and utilizing that beyond just precision passing. I think there was definitely a place for him.
Yeah, him and JT Barrett, man.
Yeah.
Underappreciated.
For sure. Well, ending on a note of football, we're going to go ahead and get into our recap of the last week of Bowling Green football. So, Sean, why don't you take us away about the big Western Michigan game?
Yeah, I mean, that was clearly the biggest game. I mentioned it on the broadcast in the Loeffler era, in my opinion. Obviously, you can mention any Toledo game, but MAC-wise, I mean, that was definitely the biggest game. He walked into that one 4-1. Western Michigan's also 4-1, and walked away with a 31-13 victory, like I said. Probably the biggest MAC win. Obviously, you can mention any Toledo game, but aside from that, I would say was definitely his biggest win.
Something I want to look at, we always touch on it, but got to come back to it again. Harold Fannin getting dangerously close to history here.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it right after the game. I think 182 yards he's away from breaking the single season record by a tight end for receiving yards, and he's I think 182 yards away. I'm not sure if we do make the MAC championship, if that counts as a game. I think it will. I'm not totally sure.
I think it does.
I think it does. So he potentially could have 3 more games, and I think he would have to average hence we do make the MAC championship game. I think 60 yards in all those games, which
it's like 90.
It does that in the first quarter.
It's like 91 if we don't make the MAC championship. Right?
Yeah, I think it's like about 90 yards if we only have these remaining 2 games.
It's amazing how 90 yards is doable.
I know.
We're looking at that like,
seems so easy.
We know that it's not automatic, and at the same time with what he's done, I've been thinking in my back of my head since Tuesday, like, that could happen against Ball State. That could happen before Miami.
Yeah, I mean, he could do that in one game.
What makes me nervous is Miami, if he still needs it, even if he only needs 30 yards, they just don't want it to happen against them. It's always like that idea that like teams will lock him down just so they don't have it against.
Well, here's the thing.
Have an eye on him
I'm sure every team that does want to lock him down, but they can't.
Yeah,
I mean, their whole game plan probably revolves around stopping him, and they still can't.
Right. Yeah. Not only can they not, but I don't think if you're Miami, to have a game plan that orients around limiting Harold Fannin, you don't have to be thinking about that record, because if you're looking to win a game against Bowling Green, that's already, pretty much order of business number 1 on your radar anyway, I'd argue.
And especially now that Terrion's back, it's 2 guys to look at.
Yeah.
Like fully, completely back. He's played a couple weeks in a row.
And that's why, like, I feel like I've said it all year. Like, one of these games, a wide receiver is going to break out, because eventually Harold Fannin's not going to have that one game. But we're at a point where, like, I'm not really believing that anymore. Just give it to Harold Fannin, and all will be good. Because I mean, I look at the stat sheet. Harold Fannin's targeted 12 times. The next closest guy was Malcolm Johnson with 4. So, like, I'm waiting for that breakout receiving game by one of the wide receivers, and I don't know if it will happen, because you don't need it to happen when you have Harold Fannin.
It kind of feels like it's just by design, not necessarily in the cards for that offense because of the dominance of Fannin, for sure. Something that really stuck out to me, and Sean, I'm especially looking to you for your perspective on this also because, you're in all the press conferences and the weeklies and whatever. You look at the middle of the game, Bam Booker goes down on a really scary hit, and you could hear a pin drop in the Doit. I mean, just, quiet, scary situation. Fortunately, he was okay. Back-to-back tackles for loss, I believe, following that.
I know Brock Horn had one of them.
Right
I can't
afterward,
remember
one
who
of
the
them,
other
Brock
one,
Horn. And, I mean, just the response by the team in a situation where, I mean, that feels like a hard spot to keep your mental locked in, and they could not have responded better in that situation, especially after like the play that came before where the kind of surprise kick recovery for Western.
Yeah, I mean, that kick, first of all, was just really weird. I don't know if it was their intention. I don't know if that was just planned or what, but all in all, yeah, a really scary hit. That was right in front of where we broadcast our games. And you could hear it, like the hit was just crazy. I didn't see it straight up until I saw the replay, and I'm really surprised they didn't call targeting because that was straight up helmet to helmet, and I don't know if you can review that or challenge it. I'm not really sure. I know that was probably the last thing on Leffler's mind.
I think if there's no call, they can't. Okay,
I wasn't sure if you can challenge because I know targeting is one of those things that
you can only challenge to take it away. I don't think you can challenge.
But that's besides the point. But yeah, I think that was in a way. I don't know how to word this, but like I don't know how to word this. But did they one of those things that kind of needed to happen, and then it kind of just fired. Like the whole sideline team was just going crazy like right after that, and it seemed like they just kind of needed that one extra step of motivation because that was a close game at the time, and with Western Michigan having all the momentum in the world, it really turned right after that. Like you said, 2 tackles for loss, I believe, on the next 2 plays, forcing them out of field goal range, and then I don't think they scored again until I think the 4th or 3rd quarter. But yeah, like I said, I don't know how to really word it, but that really motivated the team.
I mean, there was 2 extremes there that could have happened. Either they came out flat because they just sat there for a minute, their guy was down. They could have definitely came out flat and gave it up 6 points right there, but they didn't. They came out like as hard as possible. Was it 2 sacks or just a sack?
I know there were 2 sacks, and then I think.
I mean, like, when have we seen that in the last couple of years from Bowling Green that they come out with that much? I mean, we've seen them drop momentum from quarter to quarter, not even into halftime. And they turned that one from, like, complete 180 with a guy getting injured and taken off the field to 2 tackles for loss, a punt, and then you march all the way down and score a touchdown yourself. Like, it was just a very convincing display from Bowling Green after like not an ideal situation.
When it was kind of like when he got off the field and it was announced, hey, we're going to start play, I'm sure Leffler was like, let's do it for Bam Booker. Like, let's finish this game for him because he's just a loved dude in the locker room, and all the players mentioned it in their press conference. Like, he's just one of the nicest dudes. Like, you want him to succeed type of guy, and like when it happens to one of those guys, I'm sure any player, but when it happens to a guy that is so like involved in the locker room, it definitely hits harder. But yeah, they did exactly what they needed to do after that kind of situation, which again was really scary, but really fortunate that he's doing well.
I think one big takeaway for me from this game was possibly one of the best nights at Bowling Green for Scott Leffler, just top to bottom.
Mm-hmm. I was going to mention that. I feel like I said this the last time I was in Zig Zone. Like, I can't remember what game it was, but that it was the most complete game by Leffler, and I feel like I'm saying that more consistently every week I go on to the Zig Zone because we needed to be really consistent that day, and we were, because up until this point and up until this year, it was like we don't really know which team's coming for Scott Leffler. We don't know which team's going to show up. We need that consistency, and I think we've seen that a lot this year. So yeah, I thought it was a really complete game. Obviously, up until that point, like right after that is when it was we started playing lights out.
I felt like that was a more complete. Like, the Toledo game felt better. I think the Western game was a more complete game.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
From coaching to like just all around, it felt more complete. And it's not as sweet of a win because it was at home, which was cool, but on a midweek, and it wasn't.
It was cold. It was really cold. I mean, we broadcast outside, and it was pretty cold.
Yeah, it was very cold, and it felt like they played better through the whole game than they did against Toledo. And Toledo is the best game that I've seen from BG football in a year and a half. So
it's a little bit subjective To me, when you consider the positioning in the conference rankings, the timing of the game, the games to go, Bowling Green controlling their destiny, I think there's a strong case that this was the most important win of Leffler's career here.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I mentioned it a million times on the broadcast. This is the biggest game he has, and
until the day after Thanksgiving.
Until the day after Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's the biggest game. Well, 2 weeks later he has a bigger game. So, I would say that like he needed to bring it, and he did.
Looking ahead, not getting too far ahead of ourselves with the Miami game, of course, Ball State coming this upcoming Saturday. What do you make of that, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I still am worried, but Ball State has played in a lot of close games this year. I think I sent Reese a tweet about it a few days ago that Ball State lost to Central Michigan by 3 points, 3-point loss to Western Michigan, 2-point loss to Kent State, 2-point win over Northern Illinois, a 6-point loss to Miami, and a 3-point loss to Buffalo. So they play in a lot of close games, and so I was a little worried about that going into the game, knowing that easily a team could look ahead to that next week, and just thinking about that, and you can get them when they're not necessarily focused. But then I hear that Mike New got fired this week, which kind of came as a shock to me, considering, I mean, you do see it midweek. I think higher programs at a MAC school is when I'm a little like, why didn't you just wait till the end of the season, considering it is week 11? So I just didn't really understand that. So again, you can't take any team lightly in the MAC, whether they fired their coach or not. But that kind of made it seem like, okay, what kind of team is this? Was it a locker room type of thing or what? Because Mike New's been there since 2016. He won a MAC title in 2020. So he's a good coach. So I'm a little eager to know kind of what happened with that, but again, you can't take any team lightly in the MAC, so I'm looking forward to the game on Saturday.
Well, and I always regard the MAC, as I think a lot of people do, as a conference where anything can happen. It really is the Wild West, except in the Midwest. But, you look at the conference winners over the past 5, 6, 7 years. You have to go about
They've all been like different every year. I think
you find a repeat winner.
Yeah.
And so certainly the expectation's not to be the top program year in and year out. You'd like to. That's the goal eternally.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that's not always going to happen. I was very much scratching my head also when I saw that he got fired from there. Do you think, is there any concern to you that BG could let that one slip?
I mean, like I said, knowing that this year we have seen that kind of inconsistency from Leffler and his teams in the past, but this year has been a little different after the ODU game. Obviously, that was a different situation that feels like 5 years ago, which doesn't even matter. But in MAC play, he's been very consistent when it came to bringing it when he needs to bring it, and so I obviously wouldn't look past it, but at the same time, I think Ball State has a lot of problems that are outside of the football field that need to be resolved. That I think if you can just start the game kind of how you did against Toledo, I don't think they'll have a problem.
It feels like the kind of thing where genuinely, if you come out strong, play a good half of football, you may already be in a solid place. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but
and Ball State's quarterback actually leads the MAC in passing. Caden Simonza, and their offense is only ranked I think middle of the pack, 6th in the MAC. It's their defense that really makes them not necessarily that good. I mean, they're 3-7 overall, 2-4 in the MAC. Their defense is ranked 11th, so that's second to last. So with our offense against that kind of defense, obviously, like I said, you can't take any team lightly. But if that's how it's matched up, I think our offense is gonna have a field day.
Harold Fannin feasted in Beaver Stadium and College Station, so it's hard to think that Ball State and gonna be
along with Terrion Stewart being hot right now. So
something also notably we haven't really been able to see late in our seasons in his time here. Had the presence of Terrion Stewart, fighting some lingering health issues in the past, but able to be.
And I think he's still he missed a few games, but is still number 1 in the MAC for rushing. So it kind of shows the player he is. And he had a career game the other day. He was our player of the game on the broadcast, 150 yards on the ground. So I mean, just having that presence. We talked a little bit about it off air. It was like you do have to worry about Harold Fannin, but you still have to worry about Terrion Stewart. So.
Sort of a double-edged sword there for any defense trying to manage the Bowling Green offense. Also want to touch on, because I briefly mentioned it at the start of our broadcast here, but bowl eligible for the third year in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I know Leffler has been itching for this kind of consistency since he got here. Obviously, those first couple years were rough, but I mean, third year of eligibility is just, it's what you strive for. And obviously, there's some more games to play. Obviously, the more you win, the better bowl you get and the better opponent. So I think they could easily get their best bowl game matchup in the years that they have got it. Obviously, they went to the Quick Lane Bowl the previous two years. So I think if they win this week, even if they drop to Miami, I think they'll still have a really good bowl opportunity to play against
Is there
somebody.
a projection yet for which bowl?
No, I would have to look. I know,
because I know it's weird.
There's
even if they
conference
make the MAC
tie-ins.
championship,
I think
that
if we win the MAC, I think we go to the Bahamas Bowl. I could be wrong if that's the time.
I don't know all of the ins and outs of it.
Yeah,
it's always rough
weird.
until you get to the last
exactly,
week.
Yeah.
Like last year we had the Potato Bowl
We were
against
in the Quick
Wyoming. That's
Lane.
what we were projected.
Oh, yeah.
we were projected
We were
at this
projected.
point last year
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I think we were out of MAC contention and they just put us somewhere. And
Yeah, and we could easily get the Barstool Bowl too. So I mean, we can get. That's what the fun part about bowl games is, just how fun they are. But so I think that I know if we do win the MAC, I believe it is one of the tropical areas.
Bowling
So that would be
Green's-
fun for them.
Bowling
So
Green's projected with the Boca Raton Bowl against Marshall is their
bring
current
the
projection.
Boca
boom.
Raton.
He is
Bring the
in.
boom.
Former Mac Marshall. There you go.
They're from there, so hey, maybe we travel with them, say what up. Maybe they come to the game, do the coin toss.
Is the Pop-Tart Bowl out of the question yet?
No,
or
that's no more.
Aw,
Pop Tart
dang.
Bowl is
What?
gone.
Ooh,
Yeah.
What?
The other projection is the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl
Ooh.
against
Ooh.
Fresno State.
Well,
That would
that's
be
something I
alright.
can get
Fresno
behind.
State's good too.
Yeah.
What's
Fresno State is
our
good.
NCAA possibility? That's my question. Our college football playoff.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. I thought there was the thing where 2 conference champions non-Power 5 get in.
No, it's only
It's one.
Oh,
it's
it's
one
only
non-group
one.
of 5.
Only
And
one.
it's going to be Tulane or Army, or no, it's going to be Boise State.
You
Yeah,
never
it's gonna-
know.
It's going to be Boise
Never
State.
know.
I'll say
One of
that.
those
Never
three.
know.
NIU had the best chance after they beat Notre Dame, and they just face planted.
If NIU won out,
So funny. They were-
NIU won
I
out,
really appreciate
they
that.
were
So
in
funny
the
they were-
conversation.
They were ranked for 1 week, and then it was over.
Frankly, you look at the Bowling Green schedule. I think you say the absolute same. If Bowling Green won out, there was a chance at a Bowling Green college football playoff appearance. As crazy as that sounds,
Right,
Well,
because they played Penn State. and Texas A&M.
it's so weird, and obviously you could play the hypothetical game with anything, but we beat A&M and we beat Penn State. I mean, we easily could beat ODU, but so I don't know. You could play that what if game all you want, but
I mean, in
we
real
could
talk,
easily be
the
undefeated.
way the committee works, I wouldn't count it out. It's just
Yeah.
they make some weird selections.
But
a lot
in
of the
future
time.
reference, a MAC team will more than likely have to go undefeated if they want to get in. I think
Or darn
Boise State
close.
has I think they have one loss, which they do have a better strength of schedule and they
Yeah.
play in a better conference. But yeah, I think if for future years, if BG ever does want to make it, I think they have to go undefeated with a decent strength of schedule too. You can't just schedule nobodies until you get to the MAC. So it would be very tough. But I would love to see it.
Just look at what it took for Cincinnati to make it a
Oh,
few
yeah.
years ago.
I mean,
Yeah,
that
that's
was-
kind of the caliber you got to be at.
Yeah.
that one's still honestly a little bit of a head scratcher to me. That they made it into the 4 team. Their strength of schedule, their record certainly.
Yeah, well, they were undefeated. They beat Notre Dame that year. I think they beat Indiana.
Jeez, I'm catching
as
strays
well.
left and right here. You don't have to keep bringing up these bad losses I had to deal with. Good Lord.
Now, how many times is it going to take for a team to flame out before we stop overrating a mid-major team for beating Notre Dame? That's what I want to know.
Never.
Oh my God.
Never.
It's a tradition.
Yeah.
Tales old as time.
What does Notre Dame's CFP outlook look like now that there's 12? I
They
mean,
went-
there's
they went
decent
out, they're
chance-
in.
Yeah,
Anywhere
I mean, yeah, but the strength
from-
of schedule is still, and no conference championship.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah, but still,
As
you
long
have
as this
a
I
weak
mean,
schedule.
if they went out, they're probably
As
hosting a
long
game.
as this format is in place.
I'm just saying,
Notre
like
Dame is a-
year to year to year to year.
Oh, you're
I don't
saying
mean this
future.
year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
I
see
mean,
what you're
with
saying.
pretty low strength of schedule normally, and no conference
No,
championship. to boost
I
you.
will say this year I get every year there's their schedule's weak. This year is 100% one of those years that I'm like I can't defend that. But if you look at their schedule next year and years in the
Yeah,
future,
we'll have to see how it goes. It's just a question mark on CFP.
That is a weird spot, intersection point in the new playoff. Is you're perennially
Yeah.
anywhere from 5 to 11. You're never getting top 4. You're not going to be last because that's probably going to go to a realistically group of 5 champion.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, and how many years in a row has Notre Dame finished in that 9 to 15 range, where they would have been right there if it was 12-team playoff, and maybe they would have had CFP appearances and a few of those.
I think the
as well.
only year they probably would have missed the 12-teamer in the last 10 years would have been obviously 2016.
That's what I'm saying. So the format.
And then I'm trying to think, maybe 29. No, I think they would have made it in 2019.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. You could play the what if, like I said, game all you want, but yeah, I'm
Just
interested to see. But yeah, I mean, this year, as far as this year, they went out, they're in.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep it moving in our world of BG sports, but the BG football team will be back in action this Saturday when they travel to Muncie to face the Ball State Cardinals. Their
Tough
second
place
to
to play,
last.
by the way. I forgot to mention that.
Second to
Not
last.
an easy place.
So we'll have to see if they can get it done, but that'll be their second to last MAC game, and we'll look to that to see what happens and watch the MAC championship picture unfold a little bit more. Going to go ahead and move on to the ice. Mr. Ben Korek, you travel with the team this weekend. Let's talk about it.
Up in Mendota Heights, Minnesota, just outside of St. Paul, like a
State of
minute
hockey.
outside of St. Paul, the land of 10,000 lakes, the biggest hockey state in the nation. Bowling Green went in, took an overtime win in the first game, shootout. The only defensive player to take a shootout try in the 5 rounds was Jack Blake, and he ended up putting it away for the winner. And then in the second game, it was a little bit rough. It was tight going into the second half of the second period, but St. Thomas advanced to 5-2. BG scored a goal and then gave up 2 more promptly, and they ended up one more, and then they ended up losing 6-3 in the second game. So they took 2 points in the CCHA in the weekend, which is done by points percentage, not by points this year, because Augustana does not play the same amount of conference opponents as the other teams. So it's by percentage. I don't know where they rank right now. It's a little bit early to be worried about rankings. I mentioned that on the broadcast yesterday. But yeah, I think they had a very strong performance, especially in the first game. Their defense looked good. Their offense looked a little bit stifled, but they had a lot of shots on goal. There were some good things to see. The power play is still, even though they're one of the CCHA leaders in power play percentage, it's still giving them a little bit of problems. I believe they were 0 for 4 yesterday on the power play. I can check that real quick. They were 0 for 5 on the power play yesterday, and they were only 1 for 4 on the penalty kill yesterday. So penalties plaguing them as well. Penalty kill needs to get better if you're going to keep getting penalties. They had 8 minutes yesterday, and that's one of their low games. But even with the penalties, their defense looked good, offense looked pretty good, and even strength, and some good things to see from some players as well.
For reference, just because you mentioned it and I happen to have it up, even though we don't necessarily worry about it too much in the early season, Bowling Green currently sitting in that 4th spot in the CCHA, Michigan Tech, Lake Superior State, and Minnesota State leading them. And I also just want to add, because I'm, a little newer to the world of hockey, it's really weird to me, like the discrepancy in the number of overall games that have been played so far. Minnesota State sitting at 14. We've played 10.
Yeah,
another team's played 11. It's kind of all over the place. It's interesting.
It's going to look weird for Bowling Green this year, especially because the Simon Fraser and the Robert Morris games that were exhibitions were originally scheduled as regular season. So you could add 2 more games onto Bowling Green's schedule real quick if the NCAA didn't have them turn those into exhibition games. But even outside of that, they had Bowling Green had a bye week before the St. Thomas series. They have a bye week this week, thankfully, because the Volleyball MAC Championship week is this week, so I'll be able to be on those calls. But they have 2 very early byes. They're not going to have one the rest of the season, so they'll be chasing everybody in games played, which on the standings page looks really good because your percentage should be higher if you keep taking points, but it all evens out at the end. They're going to have games in hand against all the other teams, so the higher they're ranked with games in hand, it looks a lot better for them. I mean, right now they have 4 games played in the conference. Everybody below them, Augustana is below them, tied with them with 4 games played. Everybody else is 6 or 8 below them. So they already have a step up on those teams because they're ahead in points percentage and they have fewer games played. So it looks good for the Falcons standing wise, but again, anything can happen. CCHA is like the MAC. It rotates so easily. It fluctuates so frequently week to week. So not a whole lot to read into.
So what's there to look ahead for then? You said on bye this week, and after that, what are we looking for, Ben?
They have Michigan Tech, again, unfortunately, the Thanksgiving weekend in the Slater Family Ice Arena. Probably not probably not any students there. There should be a decent amount of spectators there from the community of Bowling Green, but it's Thanksgiving weekend, Michigan Tech, Friday
Go
and
to the
Saturday.
football game, then the
in
hockey
2
game.
weeks.
Just
Football
saying.
game, then the hockey game. Football's at noon, correct? Against Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Biggest
gonna kick
football
off.
game of the season, and Michigan Tech, kind of a rival now for Bowling Green hockey. So that's should be a fun series. Michigan Tech's a little bit of a down year, even though they're high in the rankings right now. Minnesota State is a very tough opponent. That's who we get the week after that. They're probably the best team in the CCHA. They just lost in shootout to Northern Michigan yesterday, but I think that's an aberration. They played really tight with U of M. They played really tight with St. Cloud State, and they played tight with North Dakota, and those are all like very good teams in all of the NCAA. So they're an impressive team. And then before we head to Christmas or winter break, we have Northern Michigan at home, Slater Family Ice Arena, December 13th and 14th. That's at the tail end of finals week. So again, another home series that students probably won't be there in excess for, but the community should still be there. Northern Michigan's the worst team in the CCHA. I can say that with confidence. So that's the outlook, at least until Christmas time. Right after, there's Rochester Institute of Technology. Doesn't count for conference record, and then they get back into the back half of CCHA at the turn of the year.
Definitely kind of an awkward one, and fortunately for one of those two series, is a bad or worse opponent for sure. But really is kind of an odd way, and I was thinking about this with football too, just the way that some of the schedules play out with Black Friday football game that's an odd one.
Yeah, it was rough last year with students, and I think there was 2 series last year like this year that students weren't able to be at the games. We know the student section is such a huge advantage for the Falcons. The players, the coaches love it, the fans love it. And while it's nice to have the community, having the students there is also a big advantage. And at least in this part of the year, you're not going to have Bowling Green hockey is not going to have students at any of their games for until after Christmas. And I think the next home series is the week that everybody. What's the week that we start school? Is that the 13th, January 13th?
Aren't you an RA?
Yeah, and I don't even know.
It's a week later, so we get out second week in December, then come back second week in January.
Yeah, so the next 3 home series are weeks that students are not in for, which is rough. Bemidji State, Northern Michigan, and Michigan Tech, students aren't in for. Then after that, students should be in for all of them. Augustana, who else? St. Thomas, and then Lake Superior State to end the year. So we're going to have as many series with students as without students, which sucks. It sucks that the scheduling has to fall like that, but that's the nature of a winter sport with breaks.
Bemidji and Tech there too, especially. It feels like games where you'd like to have the old Madhouse on Mercer packed out.
Oh,
I guess
yeah.
you kind of got to roll with what you can control.
Good opponents get loud and in their ear, and it really, the Michigan Tech really sucks because everybody always shows out for the Michigan Tech. They did last year against Michigan Tech in the back half of the season. Not able to this year. We only play them once. We don't play them away.
Is that their biggest home game of the year, you'd say? Probably.
Not counting Ohio State, yeah.
Wow.
I would say.
CCHA wise.
Augustana, I think, is going to be their biggest home series. Their most important one. I think their biggest one is going to be Michigan Tech with the community. Augustana, I think, they play Minnesota State away and don't play them at home. That's a tough series. The only other team that I would put that I would put ahead of the Falcons is Augustana. And that's a big series to have at home. You don't have to go to North Dakota, which is nice. Nobody wants to go to North Dakota, so...
You do.
Hey, we don't play them away this year.
You can go see
Can't wait
Mount
till next
Rushmore,
year.
man.
I know, right?
Wait, no,
So
that's in
happy.
South. Never mind.
No.
That's in South Dakota.
You're almost there.
No.
Dang it.
How are we on the airways?
Good try. Ben, where I look at the weekend and I think approximately splitting is certainly optimism inducing, but you also look at 6 goals allowed in the Saturday game. Where's your optimism with this team? I know people ranging from kind of hockey nuts to even the casuals are pretty high on Coach Willie.
Yeah.
Where's your optimism right now after this weekend?
I think the results don't show how do I put it? He's played to the weaknesses of last year's team they've improved on and they've fixed. Shot volume was not a good thing that we saw last year. It's been improved. We're one of the highest shot-taking teams in the CCHA now. Face-offs is a good thing from last year that we kept into this year. Our defense has improved from last year. Offense has taken a slight step back, but with shot volume, that always just has to get clicking, and once it gets clicking, it stays there for a while. So Colmore obviously is a mainstay. If you can help him out, he's one of the best tenders in the CCHA, probably top 3 if I had to say, maybe the best. Who knows? Really, it's tough to qualify, but it's just an improvement thing from last year. While the results early may not have been, I mean, you swept Fair State, which is nice, but Fair State's not a great team. St. Thomas, you essentially split with. You did take them to overtime and a game that you played slightly better than them, just didn't end up falling your way. It fell nobody's way, I guess, in regulation, and then they were able to come away with it with a defenseman in the shootout, which was really nice to see. Jack Blake had a fantastic series, his first weekend, starting both ends of a weekend on the season. There's a lot of positives for the team. Shot volume is one. Their play without the puck is really nice. They hit a lot. They draw a lot of penalties, but Willie, I don't think he likes it like that, but he accepts it like that because that's what the byproduct of having physicality, and he wants the team to be physical. They dig pucks off the boards very well. They turn the puck over a lot. They have a couple of lines that are the high-producing offense lines. They have a couple of lines that are a little bit more defensive, so you know exactly what you're going to get out of certain shifts. And I think a lot of people are refreshed by just new faces in the lineup. If somebody didn't play well, like I know Friday in the Friday game, Max Martin played. We didn't really call his name all that much on the broadcast because he didn't do a whole lot. Didn't have a lot of good shifts. He was scratched on Saturday's game, and Owen Ozar came in and had some pretty decent shifts for the Falcons in the Saturday game. They didn't end up winning, but it's just nice to see that Willie is willing to, if somebody's not playing, doesn't matter who you are, he'll take you out of the lineup. Adam Shankula is one we have not seen yet this year. I don't think he has a game played, and he was a second half mainstay for the Falcons after they signed him in January. Owen Ozar won a national championship with Denver, transferred to Bowling Green, and he's not been in the lineup consistently early. He mixes guys around, he puts guys on different lines, and yet he still seems to be finding a little bit more success than last season. So it's a good look for the Falcons. They're trending in the right direction, even though they only took 2 out of 6 possible points on the weekend. St. Thomas is a good team. You can't read too much into it. The next opponent against Michigan Tech is you need to take as many points as possible. 6 on a Michigan Tech weekend will be big. Minnesota State, you take what you can, and then Northern Michigan, you should take 6 on that one as well. So you have the course set. You know what you should do. It's just executing on that is what Willie should be worried about going forward.
It feels optimism inspiring to be trending in a positive direction like that when you're in the first year of a head coach's tenure. So we'll have to really turn our watchful eyes to that Thanksgiving series with Michigan Tech. So we'll have coverage of that. Ben, I'm sure you'll be on the broadcast for that.
Yeah, WBGU 88.1 FM, 7 o'clock, 7:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, both days.
And, of course, we'll have our recaps, as always, on bgfalconmedia.com, specifically under the sports tab. I'm going to give you guys another question and let you think about it while I recap a little bit of the cross-country action from the regional meet. So the question I want you guys to think about, because I like coming up with the football ones. It's just what I feel like it's kind of an equalizer in a lot of the lineups we put together in the studio here. And so I'm going to ask you, what is your ideal bowl game opponent for the Falcons? So you think about that for a little bit. I will go through some of the cross-country action from the weekend. The men's and women's teams both competed at the Great Lake Regional over in Norton, Ohio. The men's team, kind of an underwhelming finish, but not out of character compared to how we saw them finish at Max. They were 30th out of 31 teams, just kind of, not the strongest year for them, dealing with some injuries, some newcomers, and some other factors. The last meet for grad student Anthony Sweet in the orange and brown, who has been the team's top runner most of last season, specifically towards the end, and then this one once he returned from injury, as well as fourth year and senior Charlie Nowinski, who had a PR performance in his final meet. But on the women's side of the competition, a completely different story, placing 11th out of over 30 teams. I think 34 total teams were signed up, and maybe one of them didn't field a full team of 5, but they placed 11th, which is their top finish in the last 9 years since they placed 9th in 2015. Kylie Cubison, Regina Rose, and Lexi Panning, 2 juniors, and the MAC Freshman of the Year, all finished in the top 50. And Cubison, Rose Panning, freshman Reese Riemann, and sophomore Rachel Withrow all put up PR performances in their last meet of the year. And for those of you who aren't aware, that's pretty rare. There are entire seasons where sometimes an athlete won't put up a PR performance. And so for the team to have a top 7 consisting of 4 freshmen, 2 juniors, and a sophomore that are all going to be back next year, 5 of whom PR'd, and have their best performance of 9 years, to me, that's inspiring. Next year looks like the kind of year where they may be able to compete with some Toledo teams that have been kind of quietly dominating the MAC in the non-revenue running world. So a lot to look forward to for that. Coach Lou Snelling said that it's all up to the team in the next year of what they can make happen from a fitness and performance perspective, and that he thinks it should be their best team performance in the last 25 years next year. So some big words from the long tenured at this point now cross-country coach. So I personally, and I'm sure some others, are going to be looking forward to seeing what the team can do next year. And now that we've gone over that, I think I've given you enough time here. What is your ideal dream bowl game matchup? You can say the bowl game, or if the team is more important, either one. But what team do you want to see the Falcons take on in a bowl game, or would you like to see?
Do I dare say Minnesota again? No, I'm kidding. I mean, honestly, it as long as, don't get me wrong, I think playing those bigger teams in bowl games are cool, but I would like to see them to play either like a Conference USA team or a Mountain West team, like a team that's relatively on the same level as Bowling Green, and as well as just competition-wise. Like, I want it to be a really good game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we should have beat Minnesota last year if Terrion Stewart was playing. So we can beat those teams. I just think I like it more when we play those, like, kind of group of 5 teams that we don't necessarily play all the time, considering we'll play, kind of a nobody week 1, and then the next couple weeks we'll play powerhouses that paid us to play them. So I would say kind of like right now I'm looking, one of the projections has us at the Bahamas Bowl on January 4th against Liberty, which I would actually kind of love because I think we should have beat them last year, knowing that they went undefeated. It was like we were kind of one of their closest games, and that was the first game of the year. So I think if we played them later, especially in November, we could have easily beat them. And then the other projection has us in the Snoop Dogg Bowl, thank you, Henry, against Fresno State. So I think either one of those matchups would be pretty cool.
Dare I say, I'm going to do it. I want to be back at Ford Field for the 3rd straight year.
I mean, I would like it because we would be able to go. So I'm not.
Game
I
above
just can't
Sports
complain
Bowl,
it.
and I want Michigan.
Consistency is
There it is. There it is.
All right.
Need some revenge from
I
that.
can't complain about that. I can't.
Because it's a bowl game, and because it's doubtful many of the starters will be playing for BG, especially if they're playing a better team. I want to see one of those offensive teams because I want to see a shootout where it's just like 60 to 55, 55 to 53 or something like that. So I was thinking maybe like a North Texas, maybe a New Mexico, one of those teams that might just, I think New Mexico is realistic because that's a team in the Mountain West that might just get in by one game, and that might be an even competition game, and that's kind of what I would want to see.
I really want to play. Now that I know it exists, I really want to play in the Snoop Dogg Bowl. I don't know if I have an opponent I'm thinking for him, but just I would really like to see us play in that bowl, just because it sounds so ridiculous. It's just really funny to me.
That would be a fun one for sure. I think I'm gonna go with Michigan State personally because I follow Michigan State. I think they're gonna win their last 2 games.
Do you think they even get in?
Huh?
Do you think they get a bowl game?
I think Michigan State wins their last 2.
One of them against Purdue, so that's an easy win.
I think it's a similar situation to like Minnesota last year, where they were a 5-win team last year, but I think like a middle, low-end Big Ten team against I think having watched Michigan State that we could definitely beat Michigan State. It's like a pleasant surprise kind of thing that if you lose by a score, it's like, okay, we hung in there, and if you end up winning, it's like, sweet, we beat Michigan State in a bowl game. That would be really cool. But I do agree with your point that like playing a Marshall or something that's like a Sun Belt, like that's a competitive conference to us. Like the competition is similar. It would be a very entertaining game. Yeah.
So,
sure.
But again, to Lucas and your point, like I think a Michigan or a Michigan State team, kind of one of those like bottom tier bowl eligibility Big Ten teams, would be cool. Like because like I said, we realistically could have beat Minnesota last year, which would have been an awesome, and considering we beat them a few years earlier, it's cool to see that. But I just, like I said, I personally would like to see like a Fresno State, a Liberty, a New Mexico State, somebody from one of those more even conferences that we, like I said, don't necessarily play a whole lot of.
It would make for a better game. I
I
do with
agree.
you there.
But
Michigan-
to a high offense team, like that would be really cool because that would just be a shootout.
Michigan and Michigan State will be cool, especially if that's at Ford Field.
Yeah.
Because there'll be fans from BG that will also be able to go, and I feel like that'd be a packed game,
Yeah,
especially for a bowl game. And I mean, we proved it could be Big Ten
Yeah,
teams.
I mean, Minnesota did
considered
travel really well last year, but there was, I would say, more orange than there was.
Because here's also my thing. We hung
Maroon.
in with Penn State, who was a top 5 team for the majority of the season.
Are they a top 5 team though?
Not currently.
Ranking wise, they are, but
Yeah,
are they
I
on
mean,
Fraud Watch?
Fraud
no,
Watch.
But
They're on Fraud Watch.
still, that's a top team in the NCAA based on the NCAA's rules and their pickings. And we could all agree that Penn State is a better team than Michigan and Michigan State.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And if we hung in there a score against against Penn State, who's to say that we couldn't at least put up a good score against Michigan or Michigan State?
That's where I'm at, and why my answer was actually, when I thought of the question, my answer was the same as Lucas's, and I had this conversation with a couple of my buddies a couple days ago. But I
Not
just
a Pat
think
McAfee reference.
after going to the Michigan game last year, it would be so
The rematch
satisfying to
would
see
be
that
cool.
get back. And of course, there's
Because that
the-
easily could have gone our way too.
The rematch would
if
be
a couple
cool.
things go our way.
And you always have to remember a Big Ten school like Will Johnson is not going to play for Michigan.
Okay, so my question again:
the guys that are going to get
do you
drafted.
think
aren't
Harold
gonna play.
Fannin wouldn't play?
No.
I think he's going to play, but that
No.
easily could be
He easily
questioned.
could not.
He easily could not, is what I'm
I
saying.
don't
Like,
think
he
the
easily could sit out, which
Yeah.
that's one of those
And
questions
should.
where it's like, I don't blame the players, but
I
it does
don't
suck.
either. It
I do
sucks
hate
so bad.
seeing, this player opted out, but
I do
I
think it-
wouldn't be surprised if he did.
It
if
is
he-
worse
he
if
didn't
it's
play.
like a CFP game.
Yeah,
Like
and that's I think why
and
they
like a-
expanded too, because
yeah.
they didn't want a
Yeah.
lot of people
For sure.
opting out. But that is a possibility that we don't see Harold Fannin for another game.
Yeah,
after the Miami
unfortunately.
game, which
Yeah.
we can't blame him. You know,
No,
that's
it
the
just
point
sucks.
that sucks about it.
Yeah.
Opt-outs or not, though, I do expect, whether or not we make the Quick Lane Bowl, I think there's a very, very good chance of seeing the Falcons playing in Detroit. So we'll have to hope for the best across the board for our Falcons teams, and that's going to, I believe, do it for our time today. As always, you can find any recaps of Falcon athletics on bgfalconmedia.com, as well as listening to Falcon Radio on bgfalconmedia.com or WBGU 88.1 FM for our live broadcasts of sporting events. Thanks once again for tuning in. This has been The Zig Zone, and as always, Isaac Izumba.